We're live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I'm David Straggy, but here in the room we have our good friend Roger returning to us, and he's presenting us a movie that we have watched for this month. Um, and whether or not it has anything to do with mustaches, that doesn't matter. But Roger, why don't you tell us what
Blasphemy.
we have in store for tonight?
Well, today's presentation or talk through is going to be Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was a film made around 1988 and was directed by Zemeckis and another gentleman by the name of Richard Williams. This is not the first time that, of course, that film has incorporated animation with realism. I remember seeing it with Pete's Dragon and Mary Poppins and such. But
Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
yeah, Bedknobs and Broomsticks is another one. You know, but I must admit that probably of the ones I've seen, this is the one I like the most. It definitely cost Disney quite a bit of money to make it, and I think it turned out all right, personally. Anyways, I guess if you wanted to have some first impressions, I guess I'll start with SeptumSin.
All right. Well, not my first go round with this, and it probably would have had my vote had our topic for the month been different, because I do like the film. I watched it a while back. It's amazing. It came out in '88. I don't know why I placed it in the early '90s, but I'm not sure how I first saw it. I thought it could have been in theaters. It could have been on TV. It just doesn't hit me right. But I know I watched it a lot of times since, because like most of us in the late '80s, early '90s, we would tape stuff off the VCR and then watch it over and over like that. The early days of physical media work. So I really was impressed by the way that they handled it, the animation versus the real life. And I don't know why, but I always look at it and compare it to Cool World, which came out not that many years after, if I recall. It was in the
92.
'90s, yeah. So, it's still kind of uh, one of those that was very similar, which I hope one day maybe Shop Factory or one of these will get Cool World and put it back in print again.
They need to.
Now,
I like Cool World quite a bit. It's not like an everybody movie, but it has a great soundtrack and the animation
oh,
is pretty psychedelic.
and quite dark but interesting. And it was like nothing I had ever really seen, because unlike things like Mary Poppins or even Bedknobs and Broomsticks, yeah, the interaction was there. I mean, yeah, you could see Dick Van Dyke tap dancing with penguins, but this was a whole new level. And when you add on top of that all the Warner Brothers and Disney characters actually on screen together, that's also a rare sight, which was really cool. So very much fun. A movie
Pretty
I
much
enjoy
unique.
most times that I've seen it. One that I've been hesitant to actually upgrade, because the DVD version I have of it is got so many special features. Just hate to lose any of it. But that's my first impression.
All right, next first impression would be from you, Forrest. What do you think? What do you think about Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
All right. Well, this is far from the first time I've watched this. Because this is because I mean, yeah, this was for me. This was one of those movies that my family taped off of television, and then I watched that tape until it went defective. Uh, and and then later I'd catch it on TV or rent it free or like borrow it from the library frequently before I got that same DVD that you have, Brandon. which I got. I bought that DVD like when I was in college, and I have not upgraded it since. Just because, like what Brandon was saying, all those special features. It's great to see like how it's great to watch those and see what went into making this movie. For me, this is a childhood favorite. It's my favorite Disney movie of all time, as well as one of my top 10 movies of all time. I love the acting is fantastic from Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd, Joanna Cassidy. Excellent voice work from Charles Fleischer that was voiced Roger and Baby Herman, right? And as well as Kathleen Turner, yeah, Kathleen Turner, Mel Blanc. Yeah, and I loved like and also like the mixture of I like this very unlikely marriage of classic cartoon hijinks with film noir. That was ingenious. That was ingenious. I just love. I love it. It's like it's a murder mystery. It's classic animation. It's a classic animated comedy. It's film noir. It's a film noir murder mystery. It's just a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun for for all ages. Like it's like both the kids because actually so over the weekend I actually caught this movie in theaters for the first time in my life in 35 millimeter because I was only a baby when it came out, so I missed it in theaters. But I saw it in theaters, and it was just a whole different experience. Just seeing it on the big screen on film for the first time. And funny enough, you had mentioned that Roger, you had picked this movie because of Yosemite Sam. And right before the movie started, the theater I saw it at was showing an old Yosemite Sam cartoon.
How about that?
Yeah, right. I was thinking of you when that was playing. Also, when I was in high school, my family went to Disneyland for the first time, and I got to go on the Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin ride there, and that was so. Another reason why this movie resonates with me. And yeah, just like Brandon was saying, seeing all the Disney and Warner Brothers cartoon characters together on screen for the first time, like in a rare moment we'll never see again, apart from maybe the cartoon All Stars to the Rescue special. Yeah, it's just there's just so much. There's so much I love it. It's just so perfect. And Alan Silvestri's score is excellent. I love Alan Silvestri's score. He always has very memorable scores, whether it's movies like this, Back to the Future, or even something mediocre like Judge Dredd. I love Alan Silvestri.
Okay. Next one I would like to hear some first impressions from is Dave. What do you think about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and was this the first time you've seen it?
No, this is definitely not the first time that I've seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but my first introduction into it was in the beginning of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with the short animated feature that called Tummy Trouble, which I remember very vividly. Every time I watched Honey, I Shrunk the Kids,
Mm-hmm.
I never fast forwarded it. I just watched it all the way through with it because it was kind of a double feature with it, And it wasn't until later that I found out that it was something that was made after the feature, and then that there were more of them. So
yeah, there was one that was played before Dick Tracy too.
Okay, on VHS.
No, only in theaters.
Okay, but
yeah, the Roller Coaster Rabbit.
But that's the first time that I had actually seen my very first version of Boss Baby. But when I did finally see the film, I think I saw it. I think I saw it in its full capacity in Disney World. Actually, they had it playing at a theater there while I was there when I was like 7 or 8 years old. But I had it taped on VHS with a couple others. I think Cool World was another one of them. But I always liked films in that vein. To me, the Phantom Tollbooth is in that vein. Um, I know that what is it? Song of the South is in that vein. I know it's controversial, but I loved it. Yeah, I loved it as a kid.
Canceled.
Damn it.
As a kid, it was a
Yeah.
favorite of ours. So
To me, nothing wrong with liking that as a kid. Anybody who holds the expectations of a 7-year-old, like they hold it for a 30-some-year-old, it needs to be examined.
Needs to be
Because
realistic.
Yeah, because there is no, because that means your expectations are way beyond unrealistic.
I know that it's controversial, but I liked it as a kid, and I get why people whatever. But it's not about that movie. It's about this movie. Obviously, this is a movie that has real people mixed with cartoons, and there are a lot of cartoons that this was like the Marvel movie of cartoons. So to me, you have all of the different cartoons from Tex Avery, cartoons from Warner Brothers, cartoons from Disney, all meshing. Yeah, Betty Boop in black and white. And you just have an interesting, colorful cast, And the first on-screen cartoon that I wanted to take into my back bedroom. Of course, I couldn't, but she was there live on screen, and she was a tease. But in any
that
case,
was Betty Boop, right?
No, not Betty Beef, not Betty Boop.
Hey, you gotta,
Jake,
you
you
gotta
beautiful boy, you have my lady sitting on your avatar.
Betty Boop is one of the original cartoon sex symbols, so don't discount Betty Boop.
Indeed.
I know, but I just can't get past the voice entirely.
That short being associated with the VHS is much like that Pizza Hut commercial being associated with my Ninja Turtles VHS.
Yep.
They're just some things you just see every time and you just expect it beforehand.
But on a regular, I love watching this movie over and over because there are definitely moments that you don't catch when you first watch it, and I mean you've got little quotes and gags and stuff like that may not entirely hold up over time, but this was like a comedy, and you got to take it as a comedy, so but yeah, I enjoy this movie every time I watch it, and I get a kick out of the Roadrunner gag that Roger seems to have. I actually watched Tummy Trouble earlier, and I was like, wow, they really get violent with him, don't they? Whereas as a kid, I'm not really caring, but they really like put him through a lot, put him through his paces. But in any case, that's my first impressions of the film. I love the fact that we get a smoking cigar baby that's kind of like intelligent in the whole process, because you kind of expect babies to be intelligent. So
And also speaks with a Brooklyn accent.
True. But yeah, that's my first impressions.
All right, and next, Was it the Crypt of Horrors? Is that in the second Dave?
What?
Forgot.
It's Dustin.
Sorry about that. So, what was
Lord.
your first one? Yeah, well, that's my problem.
Well, I first saw this. I was a little older than everybody else, actually. I saw this like in my teens, and I was pretty happy with it. Like, it's a very good movie, and my opinion of it has always been pretty positive. So, my first impression was like, "Wow, this is just really good." And now that I'm older, I can kind of appreciate it more as a detective story, which is, what it is. So I think I could possibly say that this is my favorite noir film. Because it is in that genre, even though it's kind of on the fringes because it's got this kind of goofy angle to it.
I would say it's a little loony.
Yes.
Just a little.
So, I'm not sure what specifics I'd point out from my. I don't really remember my first watch because I've seen this at least a dozen times. I remember this is one thing I don't actually have on Blu-ray because it's been kind of difficult to like pick an edition of it. Like I heard that I think Brandon mentioned this earlier. Apparently, there's stuff on the DVD that's not on the Blu-ray. Is that what you said, Brandon? Yeah. So this is something that I never actually collected, even though I've seen it so many times. So I was on another podcast for a little while, and we interviewed Gary Wolfe, who wrote the book and did is kind of behind Roger, and he was really fun to talk to. And so I've got a little bit of background knowledge on this, but I kind of wish I could remember more of that interview. I wish it was a couple years ago, so I probably should have gone back and re-listened to it. But he was a really energetic, like, great person to talk to, with a lot of stories. Like, he really likes Jessica Rabbit fan art, which apparently he gets a lot of. So,
I wonder why.
I do remember being like really creeped out by the thing with the shoe. Like I'm still like upset by the thing with the shoe. That was messed up.
Pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
It's just like, geez, can't you just like
just imagine if it was Tim Curry?
So killing a tune was not kosher.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kill him, just not like that. Ew.
I mean, that's actually although that thing they use for dip, that's what animators actually use to erase animation cells.
I figured it would be something like that. That's unsurprising, actually.
Yeah, I seem to remember a cringe factor with that shoe when I was younger, the first time I watched this, so I can get that.
No better way to show how evil the judge is.
Yep.
All right, Dustin.
All right.
Did you have any more to say about your first impressions?
That's pretty much it. It was just overall very positive, and I recommend this whenever it comes up in conversation.
Awesome. Next up is Kotobukijake. So, Kotobukijake, what do you think about Roger Rabbit?
Well, I have kind of a weird. This one's a weird place in my life experience and what have you. I was definitely well aware of the movie when it came out, but for the life, and I remember being very interested in it, but for the life of me, I cannot remember. I'm almost certain I did not see it in theaters, but I don't remember when, where, and how I did see it. I did not see Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in the theaters. So, and was that Tummy Trouble? That wasn't on the VHS release?
It was on the VHS too.
It was on the VHS too.
So I probably did see that early on because that was another one that I remember seeing on VHS from early on. I do know because I did see Dick Tracy in theaters. I do have a memory of Roller Coaster Rabbit the one that was paired with that movie. I did see that in theaters. So I definitely had at least some exposure to Roger Rabbit on screen no later than 1990. But for the life of me, I really couldn't say when I saw this. And I really couldn't say how many times I saw it. Probably was not more than 3 or 4. I always liked it. I always thought of it fondly. But I'm pretty sure it's been close to 20 years since I've seen it. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And I actually did not have the time to watch any of the shorts or the bonus features. I was very disappointed about that. But
I don't think
I
I've ever
wanted to
even seen
revisit the
shorts.
shorts. God damn it. The shorts, again, I've seen a couple of them. I don't think I've ever seen the other one. The was it what's it called? Trail Mix Up, which was shown before. I've never seen A Far Off Place. So yeah, I don't know. I think all 3 of those are included on the edition I have. But the film basically opens with an animated short, essentially. And Dave, what you were saying about the violence, getting into it this time, I was like, holy crap. You're right. They put Roger through his paces. And
they certainly did. I mean,
they do.
Cartoon, it's
if you
fun.
if you think about it, Roadrunner,
Right.
Roadrunner and Coyote,
Right.
they got, especially the earlier cartoons of
Right.
those, they really came up with some like fanatical death scenes.
And so this is one thing though about me with this one. Okay, so recently, probably about 2 years ago, I revisited some Looney Tunes for the first time in who knows how long. And I was sitting here going, I'm not so sure this stuff has aged well. Because it is ultra violent. I mean, it is ultra freaking violent stuff when you think about it.
Plus,
And
smoking and racism.
the casual racism, the smoking, the misogyny, but just the sheer violence is there to behold. Of course, this is Murica, where violence is you can have it all day long, but don't dare have any sex in there. Which I still can't believe they got away with Jessica Rabbit. But we'll get more into that as we go. But my impression this time, coming into it fresh after all these years, is that the movie is kind of a hot mess in a lot of ways. It is kind of a glorious, fun hot mess in a lot of ways. The noir elements are suitably noirish. There are some really great. I as a kid, I would have had no clue whatsoever how much of a debt this owes to Chinatown, but this time around, I was definitely able to see a lot of connections with Chinatown. There's a lot of that stuff you get more when you watch it when you're older. And I was still able to fully appreciate and knowing more about it, like knowing that this was the first and probably only movie that would ever have Daffy and Donald Duck duking it out in a musical duel, or having Mickey and Bugs sharing the screen for a scene. That's almost unheard of.
Honestly, I almost feel like
that was an accomplishment in and of itself.
Yeah.
Apparently, Bob Hoskins' children were jealous of him for it.
Yes, because he didn't introduce them. I read that.
Honestly,
he said his son wouldn't speak to him because.
Honestly, even though I love this film, I feel like this is a propaganda film. Sort of.
Propaganda film.
A propaganda film. Going and telling you exactly what starving artists are like.
Okay.
What?
That's something to unpack as we go along.
When cartoons are out of work, are out of work, or
Yeah.
should I say, cartoonists are out of work. What do they do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
They
that's
serve drinks.
to me kind of what how this film was born to me.
I don't
Okay.
know what. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Dave. I don't know what you're talking about because,
Never do
like,
Yeah.
I. What?
Well,
how
knowing
does
the
that
history,
constitute propaganda? Like, maybe a theme. No. Well, one theme
The
that
reason
is.
why I
Well,
say it's a propaganda is
I'm confused.
I feel like when cartoonists were losing their spots in animation as jobs, and CGI was rolling in.
well, but
Not in the
this was
80s.
not.
No.
No.
What?
No, this is too soon for that. Now, but
Yeah.
you touch on something that there is a theme in this, and it has been confirmed
Mhm.
as a theme. And again, propaganda, that's a very strong word, but no, it's a theme that has been confirmed to be in here, which is that the experiences of the toons in the film is analogous to the experiences of minorities, specifically Black
Right.
people who are working in the entertainment industry in the 40s who are expected to either sing or act or dance or be funny or whatever, but they're seen as second class citizens. They're
Right.
suspicious. They're seen as suspicious characters. They're
Mm.
all of these different things. They're regulated to their own section of the city. All that stuff like that, and that's been confirmed to be a theme. That's not
Right.
speculation, but yeah.
Right.
So I
Or like,
think that
or like you've
definitely.
got Betty Boop, who was, she was a popular cartoon character in the 20s and 30s, and by 1947, where this movie is set, she's serving
She's a
drinks
bartender.
in a bar. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Well,
no. In
Right.
all fairness,
Oh yeah, tender.
if you listen to any of the history behind Disney and so on, animators drank a heck of a lot even when they were employed.
yeah, I was gonna say. Well, the animation.
alcoholism is a big thing in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. Well, in
Right.
animation, the world of animation is pretty rough, kind of like the world of comic
Hmm.
book writing and illustrating. It's
Now,
has its own history.
now I will say one more thing, and then we can pass it on. But Dave, you do touch up on kind of not quite in the manner I had expected, but sort of that does bring one of the other reasons, I guess, why I probably have more mixed feelings about it this time. Was that there are things shown in the film other than the high level of violence that have not aged entirely well. There's a lot of characters who make cameos that you would never see them trying to slip into a movie nowadays. And,
Like,
and that may have been to prove a point, or it may have just been Disney going, let's put these characters
I was
in.
gonna say
And
Bosco.
Well, and
well,
there are a lot of Song of the South characters in this, and
right. But you
well,
got
and
the ones from
that
like,
one. Well, but that one made some sense relative to the period because that would have been a new movie,
yeah,
and that was 1946, so that would have been those would have been pretty
yeah.
new characters. But
Yeah.
you're
Yeah, I
right.
suppose they would
Well,
have been
and
everywhere,
also,
huh?
well, that and
And they did
also,
try. They
Song
did
of the
try to
South.
mostly do period appropriate characters in the film, so it
Yeah,
does make sense.
Apart from the
Song of
Penguins
the
and Mary
South,
Poppins.
and Song
Yeah,
of the South did have its last theatrical hurrah in the 80s, only to never be seen again. So
right.
and it was in the 80s when Splash Mountain came out at Disney World. So there was something
Right.
of a renaissance of that film, as controversial as it was, and has only
Hmm.
grown in controversy today. But that was
Right.
in kind of its last hurrah of popularity.
Right.
All right, Kotobukijake, thank you for that.
Hmm.
Next one would be, hey Tammy, welcome. And what were your first impressions of Roger Rabbit, and was this the first time you saw it?
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
I hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The first time I watched it, actually, this was another one that Dad turned me on to. Thought that this was just, I, we got such a kick out of this movie. And the first time I watched it, I don't think I really got into it as much as he did. I just didn't. I don't know. I guess I just didn't get it at the time. You know, I thought it was funny. I thought yes, it had the violence and of course the sexy stuff in it. So um, I liked it. I think like you guys were saying, what I caught was so much is there is an awful lot of violence and it is it's definitely not a children's cartoon.
Uh,
I really don't think this is something that you
What?
would really want children to watch. I mean, maybe in their teens, but not children. That's all. I mean, because
What?
I don't know.
well,
I mean,
because you
You
got
know-
you got the sexy lady, you got all the violence. I mean, the kids really don't. That's not really for
Yeah.
kids.
I think it's what, isn't it? Is it PG or is it G?
it's
rated?
PG. I mean, I grew
It's
and
PG.
like,
So that makes sense.
and this is a
then,
child. Like I
yeah.
said, this was a childhood favorite. This was a childhood
that's-
favorite of mine. So
But this keep in
Now,
mind
that being
keep in
being
mind
said,
keep in mind this is 80s PG. Back
Yes.
when PG-13 at that time
right.
was pretty much reserved for films that were just shy of an R rating. Like stuff like Tim Burton's Batman, which was not strong enough for an R, but it
With
was
the
too
Temple
strong
of Doom.
for. Yeah, and so nowadays, a lot of 80s movies that were PG movies, honestly, they should have been rated PG-13, and probably would be if they came out now.
like Star
But
Wars.
actually-
Man.
Sorry, Tammy, you do bring up a good and this was part of the point I was trying to make. I think, would you kind of extend that to the bulk of Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, early Disney kind of stuff? Because to my mind, these are about on par with those in terms of the violence. But I've wondered for years if kids aren't given way too much sanitized violence in cartoons.
Oh, I mean, to me, I think that I hated Tom and Jerry. I hated the Roadrunner.
Oh man, I love that.
Because I did not like the violence when I was a kid. Though oddly enough, I did like
If you want-
Daffy and Bugs
if you
and all
want
of them.
violent, like I hated Ren and Stimpy. That was violent. Like the Looney Tunes stuff is like nothing.
Oh, I love Ren and Stimpy too, but for me, Ren and Stimpy was more gross. It was more about.
It was
Yeah.
more coarse. It was more crude. Yeah.
It
It
was
was
didn't
more
kind
like
of,
for an
the
older
Roadrunner.
audience anyway.
well, and Ren and Stimpy was kind
What's
of the
that?
work of a
She
demented
didn't like
mind.
she didn't like the Roadrunner and Coyote.
Well, Roadrunner was a smarmy little ass, but yeah.
Well, no, I like the Roadrunner himself. I just
Okay.
I didn't like the cartoon. I
Uh,
just because every time it would come on and be like, all right, he's gonna get his ass kicked again. All right. And it was just like
I think
It's
as far
like-
as,
Why watch South Park? You always
I think
want
as
to
far
see
as
like-
as far
how
as
they
fast
kill
cartoon
Kenny.
here does, I was more of a Speedy Gonzalez person. More of a Speedy
oh,
Gonzalez.
I like
fan myself.
Speedy. Speedy's cool. But I just thought that this was just a little bit more with the violence than the other stuff. I felt it was more for like a teenager and above, not something that not something that the kids, oh, it's Saturday morning cartoons, let's go watch, kids, you know?
they did openly acknowledge the Tex Avery cartoons as being a major influence, and I believe those on balance were a little more
Oh, yeah.
violent.
A little more adult in general.
Yeah, well, actually, as
Yeah.
one of the elders here, I remember seeing a lot of cartoons when I was a young kid back in the early late 70s, early 80s, and it was all about the violence. The Roadrunner. It was all about Tom and Jerry. It was all about chasing. Hitting, stabbing, pitting, falling.
How many times that you could die and the many different ways?
How many times tripping and sliding? Now,
And
but
could you make it any funnier?
What?
Or could
Like
it be
all
just
about it.
crude?
But,
you know?
but it is true that Tammy has a good point that maybe it's not a film for everybody. It's up to the parents to determine if this film is appropriate for their children. What's good for some may not be good for others. There's a lot of violence in this film, even though it is really violence and slapstick violence, and I had a lot of fun watching it.
I'm
I had
glad
fun
that I
watching
watched
it,
this.
but
I'm glad that I watched this when I was a teenager. Um, if I was a kid, I might not have gotten a lot of the humor, you know.
my
But
You know
dad,
what?
my dad loved the sexy lady.
I think one of the things that amuses me, you're talking about the age that this should be appropriate for, is that supposedly they did an early test screening for older teens, like 17 and 18-year-olds, and they all hated it. Most of them walked out. But Robert Zemeckis was like, I'm not changing a thing. This is the movie I want. So it's like, if that was the target audience, he could have tried harder.
Star Wars was more important than Roger Rabbit. Anyways, Tammy, did you have more to say?
No, that's about it for right now. Sorry it took me so long to come on, guys.
Not a
Hey,
problem.
no
Okay,
problem.
let's go to Kroll. Now, Kroll, is this maybe it's not their first time watching this, and what did you think about it on your then this time around watching it again?
Yeah, it's definitely not my first time. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theaters. I was 15 when this came out, so probably I don't remember. I just remember seeing it and absolutely loving it. I don't remember the shorts on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, I love that movie. I don't remember seeing the shorts for this or the one with Dick Tracy. So I only remember the short from this movie, which is very violent, and I absolutely love it. I loved Looney Tunes as a kid, and I'm sorry, Tammy, but you should be ashamed for not wanting the kids to see it. But that's just my opinion. I grew up on Looney Tunes. I grew up on that stuff, and absolutely loved it. And I've never been a violent person in real life. It was a cartoon. I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it. And Roger Rabbit definitely brought me back to that. And seeing the tunes together with the Disney WB, all those tunes together was awesome. And that piano fight that's already been mentioned. The one thing that I noticed this time
Yeah, it was good.
is Daffy won. Like I don't know if I missed it or just forgot or whatever, but I was like,
I
wait,
think
that
it
ain't
ended in a
right.
draw.
Donald should have beaten Daffy. I'm sorry, but Donald was beating Daffy up, and then Daffy comes out with the cannon, and it's like, holy crap, you know. But it was great. I really enjoyed that scenes. The whole movie is great, and I now remember when I was a teenager and seeing Rabbit, and I was like, "Holy crap!" Like, wow, I actually have a thing for redheads, always have, and she was definitely this hot redhead temptress type girl, even though it was animated, it was just like, wow.
She was a femme fatale.
I never really had a
Yep.
thing for animated characters at that point. There's been more since that have been very, very sexy like that or whatever, but I was just like,
I'm
wow.
not gonna lie though. When it comes to cartoon redheads, Jessica never really did it for me the way April O'Neil did.
Yeah.
I will make like one comment on this, I guess. It had been a while since I'd actually seen like Jessica Rabbit. When I rewatched this for the show today, and I was a little surprised just at how kind of far they went with her design. I was just kind of, wow, I forgot.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was gonna say is that like she's often way up there at the top, if not the very top of like cartoon sex symbols and everything. Um,
Definitely.
the the thing I'll point out with her, and part of it is just the particular aesthetic of all the different cartoons in general. It's not just her that's affected by this, but like her body proportions, not just in terms of like boobs or anything, but like her actual boob to waist ratio is so ridiculously uneven that it's like if she existed in real life, then she couldn't exist in real life. There's no chance. Now, obviously, it's a cartoon. I get that, and every cartoon character in there is exaggerated, so I get it. But it's just kind of funny how there's not even like the slightest chance that someone like this could exist. And you even look at like
And like that's
real.
the idea.
Yeah.
I know, so it's
Even
just
Barbie.
funny. I know, but it's just funny to me because even some women that I've seen that could compete with Jessica Rabbit in the boob department, even then their proportions are constrained by the real world, and that's just the way it is. But I find that amusing.
I did notice how Bob Haskins' girl was just as tall as Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
was.
She was tall.
I was gonna
Now,
say, I mean, all the guys in this movie are shorter than the women.
Now,
Except for Christopher Lloyd.
no woman can actually put up with the ridiculous proportions of Betty Boop's head.
Yeah, see, her
Yeah,
Definitely.
her proportions are bizarre in a totally different way.
yeah, definitely. And as far as the comment of all the the men are short, I don't know. Doom's pretty tall.
I say, with the exception of Doom, all the women in this movie are taller than the guys. I mean,
Right.
Eddie, Roger, and Baby Herman.
Well, yeah, definitely, baby.
Well, but isn't that like the comedian's ultimate wet dream? The comedians tend not to be too tall, and the women, it's like it's the idea that these strong, kind of powerful, domineering femme fatale type women can take interest in these like either short, funny guys or short, scruffy guys like Eddie Valiant.
Yeah.
Well, that's also kind of the gag too. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're maybe
Okay.
over analyzing some things.
Well, there is at least one more person we have to definitely ask your opinion about.
I wasn't done.
You wasn't done yet, Crow? Okay, go ahead.
No. Going back to the way she was drawn, and like I love the scene where his pants fall down and then he goes to pop up and he hits her boobs and they're like bouncing all around and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, sorry,"
Like watercolors Eddie.
He just like bumps into her. I forgot about that.
It's just absolutely it's hilarious. I mean,
If you're
she's
gonna bump
definitely-
your head when standing up, there are worse ways to do it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll definitely take bumping into boobs any day. But he said sorry, but was it on purpose or an accident? I don't know.
I think it's pretty clearly an accident in that scene.
Yeah, but my favorite line in the movie, I'm just gonna say it now because we're talking about Jessica, is "I'm not bad, I'm drawn that way." I mean, it's definitely the best line in the movie, in my opinion, and the whole movie, like I said, is absolutely great. And like I said, it's a noir. It's all kinds of different types of movies in one. You can't really. I mean, yeah, it's a comedy. It's partly animated. When I think of live action and animated, I think of this movie before anything else. And I mean, obviously, I saw Mary Poppins way before I ever saw this, but still, it just resonates as like the best action and animated together, and plus all the animated together is just something you don't see much, and having Dumbo there and everybody, even at the end you have Mickey there and Bugs Bunny, and it was just really something special. But yeah, that's pretty much my impressions of the movie. So we can go on to the next person.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kroll. And
You're
of
welcome.
course, I assume that next person is definitely going to be Dane. I also assume it's not his first time watching it, and I'm definitely very interested to think what your analysis of this particular film overall was. Go ahead, take it away, Dane.
I saw this film for the first time when I was actually in college. This was one that I grew up with. I did see the short in front of the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids VHS, and I'll be honest with you, Roger Rabbit himself, the character, I think is really fucking annoying. I never liked him. The movie itself, I think, is a technical marvel. It's never been surpassed or even imitated all that much. I mean, the closest would be Cool World, but even that
Or Space
is,
Jam.
yeah, even those pale in comparison. Um, so this film did revolutionize filmmaking technology on the one hand, and yet not really. It kind of exists in its own little world, and maybe that's kind of what makes it so special is that it is its own thing, and I don't think it could ever really be replicated again. And I do think it is a pretty solid noir story, kind of a spoof of the genre in its own way. Um, and
I don't know
obviously
if
a
I'd say
huge,
spoof.
More of a
well,
tribute.
I perhaps tongue-in-cheek tribute is the better way to say it. The noir with a more lighthearted tone than most noirs have, um, but the it's a technical achievement. It's an achievement in terms of seeing Looney Tunes characters and classic Disney characters on screen in a way that you would never see today. Yeah, I do. The funny part is people mention the Avengers and stuff. Nowadays, you see what I like to call kitchen sink movies. You see those all the time nowadays, where like it's
Yeah.
studios chucking every single recognizable property in one place in the hopes that something will stick and you'll see the movie. Those are more common than ever now. Not so much with competing companies that are that at each other's throats like Disney and Warner Brothers. You do see a lot more kitchen sink movies where they can usually get the license and it's okay. Um, so that part's not unique anymore. But in this way, with these high profile of characters, that still is pretty unique. So that's something to be celebrated. I do think I kind of lean a little bit more in the Tammy category actually, as far as like I'm not really sure I would be comfortable showing this to like a little kid, maybe like middle school age approximately, but it really just depends because everyone's different. I saw Liar Liar when I was a kid, and Jim Carrey especially in that film is basically a live action cartoon character, and that's not a kid's film, but I saw it as a kid, and it did inform a lot of my sense of humor and everything. So I mean, different strokes for different folks. I wouldn't really begrudge anyone for feeling one way or the other about it because I could see either argument. Um, I do.
Actually,
I do think if this were rated today, I do think it would be rated PG-13 and probably should be. I'm a little surprised that a lot of these 80s PG movies don't get retroactively rated at PG-13, but then
right.
again, but the MPAA is full of shit in general. Um, so that's a whole other discussion. But I do think it's a solid film overall. It's not really a personal favorite, but just objectively, it's really, really astonishing that it was made the way it was and all that it achieved and everything. Um, I do think that again, this is to me this is more of a film that's made by clearly by adults who grew up with Looney Tunes. Even it feels much more like a Looney Tunes centric film than it does a Disney film, even though it was put out by Touchstone. Like, but the sensibilities are much more clearly in the Looney
Mm-hmm.
Tunes camp, as far as I can tell. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so and that's perfectly good. But like, I do think that it's clearly made by adults and adults who are like, oh, what about all the underlying double entendres, or what about the amping up the levels of violence? What about this, or what if the baby who's supposed to be innocent is getting into Harvey Weinstein territory, and different things. Yeah, like seriously, that kid would be
Baby
me too.
Weinstein.
Really, yeah, that kid would be me too'd like that, nowadays, and rightfully so, because he's a little pervert.
Mm-hmm.
And he like walks underneath the woman's dress and is like licking his lips,
Right.
What's
because he got a taste of
Right.
honey, shall we say. But
Ew.
yeah, there's a lot of
Why is
things
everyone
in
being
this
gross
that
on this episode? Damn.
well, blame the movie. I didn't write it, you know. But my
Oh.
point is that there's a lot of stuff in this that I think there's no chance in hell you could make this movie this way again, like content wise, let alone technologically. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you just couldn't do nowadays, and
Get
some
away
of
with
that's
it.
for the better. Some of it's for the better. Some of it, it's like, oh, they don't make movies like that more. But I do think I do because I watched this as a young adult. I looked at this and I was like, geez, this is not a kids movie, at least not to me. Which again, not to say it's not a good movie or that kids maybe not all of them will pick up on certain things, but it does. It pushes the boundaries in a way that is admirable for art that pushes the boundaries, but is not as admirable for like if you want to watch like a kids movie with the whole family or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that it's like, how many perverted old men or not old men, perverted like adult dads or whatever were getting hard-ons in the theater when they were watching Jessica Rabbit, and how many of them wore their trench coats and sat back?
Oh boy.
I'm asking because like I suspect it's quite a few. And if they didn't, then they sure wanted to. And again, not just and I have to say, so Jessica Rabbit as a character, she's probably the best. Not just obviously a sex symbol and all that, but I do think she's a genuinely interesting character. I like femme fatales in general. They're the best
Like,
parts of film noir. Um,
I teased my dad and asked, "So, were you getting turned on by her or something?"
well, I mean, she was kind of one of the original like turn boys into men kind of characters, and everybody's got their character that they watched at that age that kind of turned boys into men, and a good relatively modern example of that from my generation was like Megan Fox in Transformers, who kind of satisfies that role, and everybody's got the one of either them personally or of their generation that accomplishes that feat. But I do think, just as a character, I think she is the most interesting, and she has more dimension than I think people necessarily think. And
Definitely.
She is
and
a good
she's a
character.
and she's a good
Yes.
she's a good femme fatale, and out of all the different archetypes that exist, that's one of my favorites, just because they usually tend to have more dimension than just a pretty face, even though they tend to have some of the prettiest faces in that genre. But I do like the fact that as an adult you do get to know about some of the larger socio-political themes in the piece, like I mentioned with the commentary on the way that minorities were treated in the
Right.
entertainment industry at the time, and also about real life Los Angeles politics, with the fact that indeed at that time in the 40s,
The freeway.
The Los Angeles public transportation was actually pretty good, and then when they built the highways and everything, then it just got in congested mess.
Yeah, I should mention that when I saw it in the theater over the weekend. So I should mention. So I live in the New York City area, and so I saw it at a movie theater in here in New York. So when Eddie mentions that LA has the best public transportation in the country, the whole audience was howling at that line.
Right.
Yeah,
That could just be that could just be us but just be us New Yorkers being having our superiority complex about public transportation.
I was gonna say, United States of America as a country tends to be pretty piss poor about like mass transport in comparison to European countries and things like that. But except for New York, because it's so densely populated, that they tend to do it the best, and largely it's out of necessity. But also, European countries are more densely populated as a whole, and where the Americans are a lot more spread out in comparison.
I mean, when you talk about those, like the streetcars, I mean, Richmond was one of the pioneering cities, even before New York really got heavy into it when it comes to streetcar transportation. It wasn't until later on that places like that got the subways rolling and the transportation up and about. And of course, California laid the groundwork for it and was at one point at the peak, and then screwed the pooch, so to speak.
And
Hell, even
it is worth noting, very worth noting that entire plot line with the Cloverleaf company and all the trying to get rid of the transit to bring in a freeway, to get rid of Toontown to bring in a freeway, all that like supposedly was basically borrowed heavily from the plot of what would have been the second sequel to Chinatown had they made it. So it's kind of fun to think about the origins there. Like they borrowed a lot from the book Who Censored Roger Rabbit, but they also borrowed from that unproduced movie. And so I just thought that was really fun. And I just want to throw out before I forget, Dane, you were talking about Jim Carrey movies, and it got me thinking this movie has a lot of similarities with The Mask in a lot of ways. It's kind of a similar time period. That's one where Jim Carrey's literally playing a cartoon. But you even have the two. You even have the weasels who are wearing the zoot suits. You know.
Yep. And then also that whole old tiny
and the weasels.
Also, that old tiny LA feel. That old tiny LA feel.
And the weasels, if I remember correctly, they are from The Wind in the Willows.
And you know what's funny about
They
that?
are?
You mentioned that. You know what's
I
funny
thought
about
they were original.
You know what's funny about The Mask? What's funny about The Mask is
Weasels.
that
Well, some
What's
of the
funny about
weasels are
the-
original, but not all.
What's funny about The Mask is that The Mask is a PG-13, and yet that movie to me feels more like a kids movie than this one does. In terms
It's
of,
arguably less violent.
less violent, a lot less.
You guys keep talking about how Looney Tunes are violent, cartoons are violent, and I still have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Well, I mean, not to say that The Mask isn't either, but I mean, I'm thinking more in terms of like, I think that this film is a lot more dirty-minded than The Mask is, even though The Mask is, hot for Tina Cameron Diaz in there. But even then, it's relatively mild compared to this.
Another one of those made boys into men characters.
Yeah,
Cameron Diaz was my Megan Fox. So
certainly in that film, when oh man, it's hard to beat her in that one. But the point being that it is funny you mentioned Chinatown because Chinatown also its plot was based on a real life story for CDLA politics and everything. So it's just neat to know that these noir stories, they do have real life inspirations.
Right.
And it helps to ground them a lot more. But I do think that this is definitely a film of its time in mostly good ways. And, it's something that you can't really reproduce. A lot of what you probably shouldn't reproduce, which if they tried to reproduce it, they probably could. They probably couldn't even pull it off technically the way that they did because they had to not only have access to the great wealth of animators that they had, but also puppetry because everything that a toon holds had to be puppeteered. It had to be done exactly right. It's like I just don't think that you could reproduce the work that went into this. And if you tried, it would all be CGI, it'd all be motion capture, which is kind of where Robert Zemeckis went later on, was with motion capture.
And I'm guessing where they'll go with it next year. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, but overall, I do like the film. I just I would take issue with calling it a kids' film per se, and it's because it falls into that '80s PG gray area. Some of which could probably get away with being a modern PG, a lot of which could not. But even today, we run into 21st century PG-13, which is really worthless because like a lot of Marvel movies are largely family fare, and those are pretty mild. All things
I would say the violence in
considered.
those movies is very sanitized.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, the MPAA is full of shit in general. So
I'd say
anyway.
my Boys and Men person was Madonna. Speaking of Desperately Seeking Susan, I was just so into her and that look and at the time, and I just completely had a crush on her.
Well, I mentioned Megan Fox more so like on a generational level for me, but I mean, it wasn't lost on me. But like, I was really in love with like Ariel and Jasmine when I was a really little kid, like prepubescent. You know, long before I even knew what sex was. I was like really into them. So you know,
I can see that. That was definitely really great drawing.
And since we're sharing Wednesday Addams,
you know,
I think she was like she was at least like 4 years older than me at the time.
Wait, Cartoon Wednesday, or are you talking about Christina Ricci?
Christina Ricci, I guess.
Yeah, had a big Christina Ricci crush in the late 90s.
Yeah. Well,
I was like 7. Give me a break.
Well, they got Jenna Ortega's playing her in the Wednesday Netflix series, and it's like, oh.
But if we're talking cartoon crushes, for me it was April O'Neil Calvin and Lois Lane.
I don't think I actually have a cartoon one.
Shoot, Gadget from Rescue Rangers back in the day. A lot of people like
I was
that.
really into.
I was really into. I kind of thought yours, Dustin, was Harley Quinn.
No, ew.
Oh, Holly's hot as hell, but yeah.
Dignity.
I was really into Ariel, Jasmine, and then I was really into Misty from Pokemon for whatever reason. I guess
this is going a little bit off.
She was.
We've lost our minds on this episode.
I guess even when I was a prepubescent kid, I guess I liked girls that showed some skin.
Disaster.
All right.
I'll take
Roger.
Kevin Sorbo from Hercules. I'm the only female, so I'll take Kevin Sorbo from Hercules.
Not Hercules.
Did everybody go? Okay, Dane, I definitely was very, very insightful. Of course, I found out really quick that I simply don't have the film knowledge that everybody else seems to have, but I did watch it, back in the old days, So it came out in 1988, right? So it was just before the Disney Revolution with the Little Mermaid. So I was really amazed when I did finally watch it. It was from a rental because I thought it was just a cartoon. Who would want to watch a stupid cartoon anyway? So it was done. It was all, me back then. It was all about the anime and not about the film, about the cartoon. But when I did watch it, I did see that this was quite the film. It was packed full of interesting plots. Of course, the certain amount of violence was something that was kind of like. Like a second coming. I mean, I was really missed the stuff because I used to watch all the earlier, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, Speedy Gonzales, all the Terry Tunes. I watched all of those. So this was like a homecoming to me. That also kind of proved to me that, film and animation can be made to be like each other. It doesn't have to be real actors all the time to make a story, as Roger Rabbit made. So, I was really pleased that there was something more to it than just, bunch of people put bunch of stuff together and they put it in a blender and then throw it in the film and hopefully they'll make something out of it. It definitely had a very good progression, what the film and what the plot and the film and the storyline. So I really had a lot of good impression out of it. I definitely it was kind of hard to. It probably was really hard for me to describe it to my parents that looked at me kind of worrisome. So you want to talk about a cartoon? We don't really want to talk about it. but I definitely would say that with the conditions like Tammy talked about, maybe not everyone needs to see this film. But if anybody had a 13-year-old or above or a 12-year-old or above, I bet this would be a very fun film to watch. The depth of it, where there's a lot of interaction with different stuff like chairs and clothing and other stuff. So it really gave an impression of being a deep film, where there's a lot of interaction between the animated world and the real world that Disney so desperately wanted to make happen. I heard an old story before that Walt Disney wanted to have this to happen. They wanted to have a film where the fantasy and reality could mix together. There was a lot of experimentation. And I was thinking, when I was watching this film again all these years later, that I think this film pretty much hit it on the head. You can watch the film and say, yeah, you have it all. And of course, the subject matter, which we'll talk about a little bit later, definitely was. I don't think it could got be done these days with all the heightened emotions about what is proper and what is not proper. But anyways, does anybody have any other subject matter you want to talk before we talk about the regular film?
Well, I did want to mention that I did see the Reluctant Dragon in there somewhere. That was an earlier Disney short called The Reluctant Dragon, where it was kind of like based on a King Arthur's story, except dealing with the dragon aspect of it. So I thought that was kind of unique. But other than that, go ahead and go into the plot if you want.
Okay, let's go. It looks like Dave was saying, let's get on to the plot. There's a lot to unravel with this particular film, and I think like everybody loves it. So, I guess because we kind of start out with the film is where we meet the main character. His name was Eddie, and he's hired by someone, by some animation studio executive to investigate why one of his couple of characters are not performing that well, particularly Roger Rabbit,
you should probably mention that we actually start with an illustration of Roger Rabbit, with him actually trying to film that short with baby Herman, and we see this thing where at the end he flubs a line by seeing birds instead of stars. And it was just an interesting scene right there. But
the director of that short was Raul, played by producer Joel Silver.
Yep.
Who was apparently I think Disney had banned him from he had been fired from Disney, and he actually got around that by shaving his beard.
He had a falling out with, was it Michael Eisner or someone?
Yeah.
Had a big falling out. And supposedly they cast him in the role just as a prank to see. and I found that amusing. I was like,
yes.
Okay, well, we definitely have. I did kind of gloss over the first part with the baby scene, with Roger Rabbit getting stomped on multiple times and stabbed and burned and oven toasted and all that. But the story does go on, and we're introduced to Eddie and an animation studio boss, and he's supposed to investigate why the tunes are messing up. Why they're messing up. And of course, Ed does find out that Mrs. Rabbit is playing patty cake with one of the person that actually owns Acme, Toontown, and it kind of starts from there.
Oh, and
he has to be dragged kicking and screaming in because he's got this. What's that?
I was saying, kicking and screaming into this club, this secret club,
right? Because basically, Valiant's his partner had been
his brother
killed. Brother and partner had been killed by a Toon, so he's like bitterly anti-Toon. I just want to drink, And then he goes into the club. He meets Acme, and he's kind of like, "What's with this doofus?" And then you have one of the best reaction shots I've ever seen is when he sees Jessica Rabbit take the stage.
Yeah.
His
You
reaction.
just can't believe it. Yeah.
That
Which is the
was
joke.
great.
So.
Right. But and then of course the Ink and Paint Club, where Dane kind of touched on this earlier. This is like a direct representation of clubs like the Cotton Club back in those days. And it's so there is a little bit of a social commentary going on with this one where all the tunes can sing, they can sell cigarettes, they can wait tables, 10 bar, but all the clientele are
human.
people, are humans. Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, for a song and a dance, that's basically what actors had to do just to survive.
And that's what tunes are doing here.
Right.
And funny enough, you've got the penguins from Mary Poppins waiting tables.
I thought that was pretty cool.
That was cool, even though that movie didn't come out for another 17 years after this movie is set.
Well, that was one of the things, and you couldn't really, even in '89, you really couldn't show people of color being discriminated like that openly. It just wasn't. It wasn't appropriate to show.
Well,
So
and keep in mind that the '80s was the early days of MTV. They weren't even putting black artists on there until Michael Jackson. Yeah, so I mean, that's sort of why like people really like to hold the '80s up on a pedestal. But if you really peel back the layers, there was a lot of ugliness underneath the '80s, just like there was ugliness under any decade that you pick.
People hold the '80s on a pedestal just because the people who have come of age now grew up in the '80s.
Yeah.
And psychologically, you're drawn to your childhood. Like the '90s are now starting to get that reverence.
I know.
And in about a decade and a half, the early 2000s will have that reverence. So
and all of it is just utterly ridiculous because again, the facts just don't back you up on that,
Exactly.
And part of that, but that's also why like Song of the South could get something of a last hurrah in the '80s because I think there was a lot about society that was still kind of stuck, and it took a little while to get make any kind of headway on that. But I do think seeing the penguins in that scene is kind of a neat homage to the fact that, again, as controversial as Song of the South was and continues to be, it was a pretty significant technical achievement with the Zippity Doodah sequence. And then that helped lay the groundwork for Mary Poppins and then for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So you see the stepping stones. So it kind of makes sense why they're there, even though they're not quite period appropriate.
Okay, well, we do know that the guy from the leader guy from Mr. Acme that's also in charge of Toontown.
Marvin Acme.
Yeah, he apparently needs to be talked to and investigated by Ed. So Ed eventually goes to this seedy, like speakeasy kind of place. Of course, he meets a big gorilla, and he mentions he's nice monkey suit.
Large ass.
And of course, there's a big scene, but it was pretty remarkable because this is the first time, at least to me, my impression, that this is the first time you actually see a Disney character and a Looney Tune Warner Brother character come together in a some sort of skit, was as a face off of a piano.
Yes, that was fun.
I've seen this happen before ever.
Yeah, Daffy and Donald. Although that actually did lead directly into some of the controversy of the film. Was it Chuck Jones? I think it was who basically disowned the film and has spent years trashing it. And partly it was because he felt that he and Williams were. Am I remembering his name correctly? I guess the other animator. That they were overruled directly. Like Zemeckis, he thought just went roughshod over what they wanted. And yeah, he wasn't happy about that at all. But they wanted to use Zemeckis wanted the old school portrayals of the characters to make them more period appropriate. And Jones wanted to do his version of Daffy. And it was like, yeah.
There was
But
That's unreasonable. Come on, Jones.
Being drawn in certain
Well, and you wanna talk about someone with some underserved talent or some sore spots. Richard Williams, the animator, different movie, but his The Thief and the Cobbler, like he did not get to fulfill his vision at all for that film, but he did seem to show off his stuff with Toontown in this, because that was I think he was the lead animator of Toontown.
Yeah, and that first scene, the scene between the two ducks, is very well choreographed. It's got some. It was pretty fun, and of course, one of the stipulations of Warner's allowing their characters was equal screen time. So basically, they paired up Daffy with Donald. Later, they paired up Bugs with Mickey. At the very end, there's sort of a quick little coda where Porky and Tinkerbell kind of get a brief little. Yeah, so that was kind of a fun way that they did that.
And Chuck Jones is, I believe, Woody Woodpecker was in there too. So,
right. Yeah. Well, that was Walter Lantz, the Woody Woodpecker, but Jones might have been involved. I don't remember. But yeah, there were a few oddballs in the film, like that one. Droopy was in there, which yeah, that was kind of.
I love
elevator operator.
Yeah, exactly. And I love. I've got to say, with that sort of speakeasy or whatever it was, I did like how the password was Walt sent me. I mean, that's just kind of. I wonder if that. I figured it was just for a laugh. Yeah. But then when you guys were talking about what Walt Disney was wanting to do, I wonder if it was partly an homage to that.
It had to be. Probably. It definitely had to have been, because without Walt Disney, you wouldn't have this interest in putting animation together with real people.
Right.
I think Disney had taken over this film at one point as well, so they had the monetary ways of making this film happen.
Yeah.
Well, Walt himself, of course, was long since dead, but I know his son was involved in the production. Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting that I don't think Dane was talking about it quite extensive, quite a bit, at least some of it. But it's a gentleman named Richard Williams, because this film was directed in two ways. You had Roger Zemeckis doing the live parts, and you had Richard Williams doing the animated parts. This film was it was so complicated to make. They actually had two specialists making this film at the same time. So I didn't realize that at the time, because it was just a film to me. But I was doing a little bit of research on that, and I did find out that Richard Williams was quite the extraordinary animator. He was making he made a number of films and adverts, as well as something called the Thief and the Cobbler that never did make it to fruition, even though there was.
Actually, it did come out, but it tanked.
Yeah, there was some sort of the final cobble, something like that. There was several fan attempts to finish it. Yeah, so, and that of course led into other Disney films like Aladdin. But anyways, getting on this particular show, it's an extraordinary film where you have so many experts working at the same time, and of course the bar scene shows it off with all these different characters. Betty Boop, I don't think I've actually seen her in action, other than some pictures and such. Even to this day.
And I believe they actually got the original voice actress back to play her, if I'm not mistaken, which they did with a lot of the characters, but that was particularly interesting considering how old the character was.
Yeah, I was looking up on the character sheets, and a lot of these actors have passed away. So they're definitely they were not young people even back in 1981. But anyways, when kind of moving the story forward a little bit, we know now, Roger now is told that indeed Mrs. Rabbit has maybe some sort of relationship with Acme, and of course he flies off in a tangent. He doesn't understand why she has perhaps left him. Is there any
She
storm?
played patty cake.
Okay, yep.
They really do play patty cake because you actually see the
How
animation films.
dare they?
Because
That was a
evidently
very
Patty.
odd scene. Like I
Yeah.
think they were using that as a stand-in for something else because of the
Patty cake
rating.
is old time slang for having an affair.
Or
Right.
having sex.
Okay.
And I like how they had the pictures to where it looked like a flip book when they were doing
Yes.
Absolutely, Roger was
Right.
so quickly. It was things like
They're basically making a reference to foreplay in the bedroom. So
yeah. Well,
I always assumed something like that. It was just still weird.
It was a gag.
Because, well, of course,
It was
when
a
you're a
great gag.
kid, you would watch it and think,
I
oh,
thought-
they're playing patty cake.
I thought it was funny, and then evidently it was like a crime of some sort, you know. So
It was more just like, because patty cake was back in the late 40s. Back in the 40s, that was just another way of saying that they were having an affair.
indeed.
And then,
Right.
if you think the scandal, really because of a Toon and a human
Yes.
getting together,
Right.
also.
Strange relationship.
Right.
Oh, I didn't
And
think about that.
yeah, that's a big part of it, no doubt.
And there's another part going on too with this eventual Cloverleaf Company taking over various businesses in this whatever town it is.
L.A.
Yeah, just taking it over. I remember seeing in the film where some electric company was taken over or something like that, and this Cloverleaf sign was put up.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, of course, as we move on, we actually Ed actually has to meet. Has to go to this particular warehouse that for whatever reason there has been a murder, and the guy that was murdered was Acme. We just met Acme, and of course he dies very quickly after that.
The
Of
rabbit
course-
cacked him.
Yeah, and of course it was done by a heavy safe being dropped on his head. It's pretty gruesome. I didn't have to put that in the film. But if we also made another very important character with this guy in black. His name was Judge Doom.
Judge Doom.
He looked like something out of if you took Darth Vader's face mask off, he would have looked like him. Pretty kind of a good weird look.
I would say Darth Vader meets death.
Yeah, he's always wearing glasses. He wears all black, and he has doogies too with these weasel things the weasel cartoons.
These goons.
Yeah, I really like Goon Squad, quite literally with zoot suits, no less. And of course, now he's getting more and more involved with this situation because Eddie did not want anything to do with Toons, and now he's being dragged into this, right? And
It's a classic film noir trope.
Yeah, because he's like your basic Slugworth character.
Well, I mean, again, like you were saying, a film noir trope. Like you see this a lot for example, the films that Hitchcock did that were more in the noir-ish thing, and then also
like
yeah, exactly, or what was it, the Man Who Knew Too Much or whatever, things like that. If I'm getting this, and then even like I'm sure Eddie Valiant probably has a little bit of Sam Spade to him. I'm sure that's part of the. And heck, even Jake Gittes, again, going back to Chinatown, there's a lot of these characters that they're not seeking out these jobs. They get thrown at them, basically. Just a couple random things I just want to mention. With the casting of Doom, Christopher Lloyd does such a great job with the role. He's so good. But I'm so amused to read that I've read the same thing before regarding the Joker on Batman the Animated Series. This is at least 2 roles that Tim Curry lost because he was too scary. it's like, wow.
Funny, on that note, though, speaking of Batman and scary actors being too scary, so Tim, I'm kind of thinking about how Christopher Walken could have played this character, because Christopher Walken was apparently too scary for Tim Burton.
Really?
Yeah.
In what?
Oh, in Batman Returns? Yeah, I remember reading that he thought he was creepy.
So I'm kind of curious how someone like Christopher Walken might have played Judge Doom.
Huh.
Would he just been just as intimidating as Christopher Lloyd, or
in a different way? I'm sure. Yeah, there was something otherworldly about Walken.
Well, I mean,
I have like a question to really ask because I'm a new guy here. But what exactly is film noir or noir?
It's a subgenre. It's
It's a subgenre of normally involving a crime or a mystery or something mysterious. Oftentimes, it will have a kind of a twist. Sometimes it'll be black and white. Sometimes it'll be color. But it's often got a sort of a
pulpy feel to it, you could say.
Yeah.
Sort of.
It's like a gritty detective story.
Yeah.
Not always though. That's kind of a misnomer that it involves detectives and stuff. That's the bulk of it. That's the bulk of it, but there are plenty of noir stories that are not about detectives or whatever. There's sometimes it's often about people trying to get away with crime. That's another aspect of it.
Right.
But often it's black and white. It's usually there's some grit to it. There's some morally gray characters. There are there's usually a lot of just seediness to it, but in a way that's stylistic and is appealing.
And there's usually a femme fatale.
Yeah, at least one, and usually some kind of morally ambiguous protagonist, or the style of it's a big thing too, in terms of dialogue, in terms of the visuals. They derive very heavily from German Expressionism.
Okay, well, that's good. That's very informative again. I've got to learn about this stuff.
Good deal.
Move on. As we move on, we come to probably one of the most interesting parts of the film, is where Judge Doom starts explaining that there's an investigation going on with the death of Acme. They're gathering evidence, and for whatever reason, he definitely wants to show off this stuff called dip.
Yep.
He takes this, finds this innocent little shoe that looks like a dog, at least to me, like a squeaky little doggy thingy. And he says, "Well, I'm going to take this shoe and I'm going to dunk it in this stuff."
He's how to respect the law.
And of course, the first time I didn't think you actually did
respect
it.
my authority.
Turpentine and
acetone
and all kinds of weird concoction. And they're saying that cartoons are hard to kill, but they can get dissolved by this stuff.
Yeah.
It does take the shoe and they jams it in there.
Yeah, that was probably
really
one of the more disturbing
scene. It's actually very gross and like horrible. So I'm kind of surprised we can laugh about it.
I think that bugged me when I was a kid too. Yeah. And here you get one of your first clues that something's not right about the good judge, because he puts on this really intense, thick glove before he does all this.
They describe that stuff as basically acid. So,
I mean, it's still paint remover.
It's also one of the first signs that it's also one of the first signs, red flags, that Judge Doom isn't what he appears to be.
Yeah. Now, and I was going to say, I will admit, turpentine is some foul stuff, So he don't want to do too much, but he shows undue caution, I think you could say. But yeah, he's an interesting character, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And honestly, one of my biggest complaints about the film, we'll get to it when we get to the end, but I think they could have handled his big reveal better. But we'll get to that. But
they did
Well-
fine.
Well, we find out that cartoons can die, and
Yeah.
also found some evidence that there's detectives have found some evidence that Roger may had something to do with the death of Acme. So they're launching additional investigation on Roger Rabbit, and he has enough evidence now to try to go ahead and grab him. So now when Eddie goes back,
evidence, quote unquote.
yeah, how slim it is, a little bit of paint or a little bit of paint off his gloves, and so Eddie goes back to his office, and of course Roger Rabbit bursts in his space saying that, oh, I'm being framed. I didn't do anything wrong.
No.
And of course there it has been of course the baby also said that Roger Rabbit didn't do it. Roger Rabbit now wants Eddie to help him out to exonerate him from being either imprisoned or whatever
From
they
being
do.
dipped.
Dipped in dip, perhaps. Who knows?
I did want to mention also that this is preceded by one of the coolest scenes, in my opinion, in the movie, where in one shot you get to basically see Eddie's current state and his past state unfold in just this continuous shot, because it goes through his brother's desk, through the newspaper filings, and then
Photographs.
slowly goes through the photographs to all the empty booze bottles to, of course, him drunk at the desk.
And
To
all the
me, it's
dust and
one of
cobwebs.
it is one of the coolest scenes.
Yes.
Simplistic yet amazing, and
It's very well
execution.
done. Yes.
Yeah. It says a lot. It says a lot with it says a lot with so little.
Yeah, I like
Right.
I like how one of the pictures is on the road with Dad, and it's a picture of him with his brother, like his children,
They were circus clowns.
with a clown. Yeah,
Well, actually, the clown was their father.
yeah. It makes sense later on because he does some pretty impressive circus tricks
Yeah.
later in the movie, and it's like it sets that up.
And I love how there's a reference to the McCarthy's to the Red Scare, like by clearing Goofy's name, like from being a communist.
Right.
But it's amazing how they can, just in such a quick succession,
Yeah.
it's so much background information delivered in ways that many films have a hard time doing. They usually end up having to say, previously we had this, and just explain.
Nowadays they would probably give if this movie were made now, like Valiant, they would have to do a whole movie about Valiant and Valiant.
Right.
That would be a good movie, honestly. That would be a fun movie.
Yeah,
definitely would.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad.
A whole movie about Eddie and Teddy trying to clear Goofy's name from communist accusations,
from McCarthy's ravages.
Yeah.
Right.
We also hear about another nugget of information that's floating around about a missing will. And then this will they have a great impact upon Toontown. Of course, we haven't really seen the fullness of Toontown, other than little rainbows and hints over the walls. There's something more behind the wall that's shown. But this particular will would change. It would have some great impact. What's going to happen with Toontown next? So, and it does go on and say that whoever finds this will have some, again. I don't know if I'm talking about it, but anyways, this will have some sort of impact on it. Of course, I seem to remember that Jessica also comes and talks with Ed to say that Roger didn't do it. And eventually, Ed kind of says that reluctantly decides to help out Roger Rabbit. For whatever comes out would come out, and he would find out about it.
Well, he kind of has his hand forced. I mean, for one thing, not long before he even gives Roger the brush off, the weasels come calling, looking at his apartment, his office. And they kind of give him the once over. He manages to hide Roger in the sink. While he's
stuff. They just want the rabbit,
right? And of course, Roger has handcuffed himself to Eddie, which sets off the great moment later where he just where Eddie's trying to saw the handcuffs off, and then Roger, he's like, "Could you stop moving? Oh, will this help? Yeah. Wait a minute. Could you get out this whole time? No, not till it was funny." But which actually, I was reading an article today where it may have been true. He may actually have not been able to do it until it was funny. I mean, you never know really how this universe works, but it's. But yeah, they. Never mind. I thought I had another thought. Never mind.
Well,
who knows where thoughts come from? They just
yes.
Toons. It seems like Toons seem to have their this unwritten law where they can't say anything unless it's funny, and I think that's what I was.
And their purpose in life is to make
more or less. Like their purpose is to entertain, and that's pretty much they have a hard time doing anything that's not
directly related to that.
Exactly.
And a lot of it has to do with a hand-in-hand comedy, slapstick humor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes into play with Eddie later on, with his jumping around and him understanding the world a little bit more.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. It was about setup and payoff. Someone had already mentioned that this movie does a good job with it. But we do get a setup to the payoff with the will at that club. Like when Eddie meets Acme. And what looks like a throwaway gag that just makes Acme look like a goof actually sets up the big final
reveal.
Thing with the will. Yeah. So that was kind of a fun little thing to think about this go around.
And Baby Herman sets up the fact that the will was supposed to show that Acme was going to leave Toontown to the Toons, but of course it's conveniently missing. So
Well, Roger had it the whole time because he wrote the love letter on it to Jessica.
We don't know that yet in the movie, though.
Actually,
I do like how one of the bar people when Doom comes in looking for Roger Rabbit, and he's like, "Oh, I've seen the rabbit. Hey,
Harvey.
Harvey, how you doing?"
Yeah, that was great.
He pretends to be drunk. That was pretty good.
That was a good way to bring that character to life. The Invisible Bunny, Harvey.
Right. And of course, this is when Eddie and Roger have gone to his girlfriend's bar to try and lay low for a while. She has an abandoned speakeasy under the place, and that's it. And then they have their but again, the things where the Toons are required to do certain things. The judge starts the what do they call it? Shaving a haircut routine or something. Yeah, he starts that, and Roger has to respond, and it's like, yeah.
I like the setup for that.
Yeah.
Where Eddie's like, "Well, that's ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't have to," and Roger is clearly like fighting not
He doesn't,
say
Yeah.
anything
he doesn't
of
know
everything
who's
it got.
loony.
Oh.
He doesn't know who's
Yeah.
who's toony, who's loony or
Linear.
merry-go-round broke down.
Anyways, now that the Ed and Rogers is they're cooperating, now they're trying to find, running away, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. The apparently the Judge Doom is they're in his goons are trying to find them. They're trying to detain them for whatever reason. And I've seen there was some sort of part in it then when they're in or around the paddy wagon, and they find that the next character that was kind of a big character was the Toon bed, the Toon taxi cab.
Yeah, Benny. Yeah.
Benny, you got
I think they commandeer the paddy wagon while trying to escape from the and they get away from it. It's kind of fun because earlier Eddie had seen what happens when Roger drinks alcohol, and it's interesting.
And he pulls a classic cartoon trope right here.
Yeah,
trying to get him to drink.
Well, first he tricks the judge by saying, "Well, you wouldn't let a condemned man not at least have a last drink or something, right?" And the judge is like, "Yeah, oh, okay. Well, why not?" But yeah,
I like did anybody catch the judge's justification for it? Anything to prolong an execution. And it's like,
yeah.
And it's like as if we give Doc Brown the wake-up juice.
Yeah, well, maybe a little more intense.
Which unintentionally, Doc Brown is in this movie.
And it's from the same director, too.
Yeah.
That's probably why Doc Brown is in this movie.
I have to admit, this scene, though, so much alcohol abuse. All those busted bottles.
Yep.
Yeah, his girlfriend was definitely in the red after that. It was, but yeah, Roger gets out of this by just destroying the bar, pretty much.
Well, and also he also destroyed Arcane Maroon's office earlier in the movie. Doing that,
but the dip gets knocked over, and they causes some panic on certain individuals' part.
I would say, as Judge Doom edges away from the dip as it's spilling all over the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they describe it as acid, so it really doesn't seem all that weird. I don't know why you guys are like, oh, why would he get away from the vile vat of acid that just spilled on the floor? Like,
yeah, but if it was acid, don't you think that it would be going through the floor?
Well, it's described as paint thinner.
Yeah, this isn't like hydrochloric or sulfuric acid. This would be more like just
at
bleach.
the same time.
This is Toon acid.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm not going to say that putting on the glove was overly suspicious because I wouldn't be handling paint thinner regularly with my bare hands. So,
which it sounds like everybody else here is totally down for, apparently.
Well, if you're making
y'all do what you want, but
I wash it on your face. Yeah.
How else are you gonna make moonshine?
Right. Yeah. Anyway. Well, actually, no. That's a good point. Actually, strangely enough, if this was set in the 40s and the bottom of the bar used to be a speakeasy, there's a possibility these characters would have been familiar with home-brewed alcohol that is more poison than beverage. But anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, most of that, actual moonshine would either have paint thinner in it or be darn close to it.
They would use wood grain alcohol to make things go further, which wood grain alcohol is straight up poison. But they would do that, yeah.
Well, I mean, they were also using ethyl alcohol, which the problem was a lot of the alcohol was laced on purpose for those reasons with poisonous compounds. which
What
a
a
sucky
lovely
way,
time.
but hey, the government was like, well, it's illegal, so it's not murder if we kill you for doing something illegal.
Well, I mean, it's not unlike basically you make anything illegal, then of course there's going to be the illicitness that goes along with it. It's like a lot of
Yes,
street,
definitely.
lot of street drugs that they would be dangerous enough if they were in fact what they claim to be, but then a lot of them they get mixed in with other kinds of illicit things that make them even worse and less pure and that kind of stuff, and then they get even more dangerous.
Okay, enough talk about illegal stuff. So let's let's get back to the.
Anyways, they of course they escape with the taxi, and now they want to talk to. I guess Ed finds out that Cloverleaf has taken over more businesses. Right, they took over electrical studio, or they took over other stuff in the city, including the original the one of the animation studios that
Maroon cartoons, yeah.
that was it.
Maroon Cartoons, who produces Roger's cartoon.
Yeah, and so he wants to go in now. Ed wants to talk to that particular that particular boss of that particular studio, and they want to go over and talk to him. So they head on over there. That Maroon guy tells him that he was definitely was either encouraged to or blackmailed into to selling his business off to Cloverleaf. It also has a tie-in with Acme, so it says, and it's kind of a jumble to me. But, definitely, he has blackmailed Acme to selling his company and studio, and now he has to find out what to do next. But unfortunately, Maroon is then he was, I guess he does die. He gets shot with an arrow.
The bullet, actually, he gets shot to death. Gunned down, yeah.
And now they have to, of course, flee and from that particular area, and then try to figure out what to do next.
Well, and if I remember correctly, it was Jessica Rabbit he saw fleeing from the place.
Yep.
So he went and followed her. I guess is
follows her to Toontown,
and ultimately, what happens after that?
Well, Jessica does kidnap Roger Rabbit. She was, of course, hoping that he wouldn't get hurt. Also, I think at this point we actually entered either go get near or enter Toontown. And let me see. I also remember, I think I get a little too ahead of myself, but Eddie decides to fight back. He has a cartoon gun with bullets to fight with the gun.
But more importantly, this is where he kicks his drinking habit.
Oh yeah, he does shoot a bullet at the drink.
Oh yeah. He throws it out, decides not to go with it,
and yes, and shoots the bottle.
Right. And then he thinks about going in armed as usual, but then he pulls out the cartoon, which is got a nice little note there from Yosemite Sam, and he's got some rather colorful bullets in there.
Yep.
The cartoon shooter,
including one that aged like that. I'll admit that including one bullet that I'll admit aged like milk.
Right.
Which also happened to be the one that destroyed the bottle.
Right.
Now it's interesting that the gun itself it looks like to me that sometimes it's real and sometimes it's animated.
As well as some of the weapons of choice that he ends up taking up and going against Doom with.
Yeah, it ends
like
up kind
the
of being
sword
the,
that was like the sword that was singing Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, that
It
was
kind of ends
that
up being that
was-
Futurama joke. There's a fight at the special effects warehouse.
Yeah,
Right.
that whole Frank Sinatra bit was kind of random, but I know that's part of the joke.
And it definitely over my head with that one, but I do remember the mallet with the punch with the
Right.
with the punching glove in it.
Well, we had the scene earlier when at the murder scene where the cops were playing basically with some of the stuff.
Props.
And,
Yeah.
and you had the one guy bringing out the portable holes, which of course Eddie ends up using the portable holes to save himself when he's
mallet.
and he was about to get into some trouble. I think wasn't Doom was coming at him with that
I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
yeah,
Steamroller.
that's the word I was looking for. But yeah, I think that was a little further into the scene. Yeah.
And then of
Yeah,
course
he makes his way to Toontown.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all messed up.
Well, yeah, it's a to me it's like a big jumble at this point.
it really is.
I do remember that they do go into Toontown. Everybody, all the figures in Toontown.
Did we mention that Roger Rabbit wrote a love letter to?
No, I didn't mention that.
Using a nice clean piece of paper.
Using a nice clean piece of paper, whereas later it comes up again.
I think we're jumping ahead. I think we're jumping ahead here.
Oh yeah,
We
a
are.
little bit, but I just wanted to mention it because it was
We
not
did
mentioned.
mention it, dude.
It did.
I'd like to know when.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, then I guess we did. So, moving on.
Oh my god.
Well,
Moving.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Anyways, moving on. There's of course a chase scene. The weasels are after Roger and after Ed, and they're eventually captured and by Doom and Weasels. They're at some sort of factory or a big factory kind of place.
They're at the
Yeah,
Acme factory. Well, Acme warehouse. Sorry.
Where they were earlier in the movie when they found Acme's body.
Yeah.
Oh, we kind of jumped ahead. We jumped ahead a bit because we didn't really talk about Toontown itself.
Well, Toontown looks like a big shiny place that everybody seems that the cartoon characters are always saying hello.
It's pretty great, and it's a pretty wild place. I mean, we get that Mickey and Bugs scene.
Yeah, we do get that. They're apparently they're in a parachute. They're skydiving or they're falling down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this definitely I've never really.
Eddie gets chased by some by one gnarly looking woman.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is also the point where Eddie catches up to Jessica, but then Jessica reveals that what he is saying isn't everything. That his own eyes are blind. That he's blinded by his own hatred of Toon. That he's blinded by his own hatred of Toons.
Okay.
Right.
Well, definitely doesn't like Toons. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, eventually, Doom does say that he reveals that he actually is in charge of the business that's taking over the other businesses, right? And so he's the man behind all the business taking through Cloverleaf, and he now also wants to he has a crazy scheme to get rid of Toontown. That's where the dip comes into place.
Yep. He's basically looking at major genocide.
and
to
ultimately,
build a freeway.
it comes down to having kind of a fight with the weasels that are his goons. That apparently they can't help but laugh at certain things that Eddie does, and he uses that to his advantage. You know, so I think they play on that a little bit because this is where it gets a little weird. We have that whole Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit are tied up and hanging on a hook, and getting sprayed by this shit that's
By the dip,
part
and
of,
they're trying to dodge it.
yep. And meanwhile, Roger is going on and saying, "Hey, buddy, you're knocking them dead." And you see the souls of these weasels coming out and going upwards, like an old dogs go to heaven kind of moment.
Which it does make you wonder why they would go to heaven if they were bad guys. And then the other thing that kind of freaked me out when I saw the film was when the one weasel was trying to hold on to his soul.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that kind of creeped me out. And that's weird, but it's I just for whatever reason that kind of unsettled me. But then the one line that we didn't talk about that I think is kind of key to Jessica Rabbit as a character and to why the relationship she has with Roger makes a weird amount of sense is the what do you see in that rabbit anyway? He makes me laugh, yeah. And I know that is an important factor for a lot of relationships that women do want a guy who can make them laugh, and it explains why there are some guys that you're like, how in the hell did he get her? Well,
yeah,
that could be a factor, but also it's a believable reason.
Well, and Dane, I'm glad you mentioned this right now because I was about to mention something else and I'd forgotten about that, but that just underscores my puzzlement. Does anyone else find it completely incongruous and a breach of the internal logic of the film that all it takes is a fit of laughter to kill these weasels when they've said repeatedly that the dip is one of the only things that can kill Toons? They and Jessica had said, well, I married him because he makes me laugh. Well, if laughter kills Toons, then why would you do that? So it's like, am I missing something on why the weasels are affected that way?
It doesn't kill Toons, the laughter just kills those Toons. And maybe those specific Toons.
And it was foreshadowed.
Meant to be funny.
And it was foreshadowed. And it was foreshadowed by Doom saying, eventually you guys are going to be die laughing.
It was mentioned, yes, but I'm just kind of curious why them. Like, is this meant to be one of those things where maybe like it's supposed to be implied that they're animators had created them that way? Is that
keep in mind that it's in this world it's Toon's job to make humans laugh, but then Eddie is a human making them laugh, so maybe it's like a reversal factor.
Okay, I guess that makes...
It's definitely some morbid humor in there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's an obvious play on words with knocking him dead, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is that it's Eddie rediscovering his clownish roots, rediscovering his childhood, his own ability to realize that life can a sense of humor, that life can be enjoyed in some respect. And also, again, it's not really the place of humans to make Toons laugh, so inevitably that would probably short circuit their brains, if nothing else.
So what would have happened, though, if Roger had thought that it was the most hilarious thing ever, or Jessica for that matter? Like, what if they had,
I don't think it was meant as a permanent death. I think it's meant as a cartoon death. Which you see that all the time in cartoons where they do that. I think that the weasels will be back later, depending on whether they get destroyed by all the dip that was thrown around later.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
I
I could see
don't
that.
know exactly, to be honest, but it is a good point that
Yeah.
But I agree that the cartoon, because the tunes can't really, as far as I understand, they can't really die in the conventional sense unless it is, as far as I remember, because they like to get beat up and they can endure an awful lot. But I mean that is kind of that's not fleshed out enough as it could be.
Okay. Well, while everybody's inside the Acme warehouse, there is a scuffle that breaks up and a fight that starts up between Judge Doom and Ed,
Eddie.
right? And I think at this time, Jessica and Rabbit and of course Roger Rabbit catch up, and they're avoiding the spray from the dip, and and we find that maybe of course we thought that Judge Doom was not normal, and it's confirmed that he is not normal when he's ran over by that steamroller.
Yeah, right.
He kind of rolls over like a cartoon, and he kind of rolls back
Yeah.
up, blows himself back up again. And of course, to me, was one of the more interesting scenes is where he says, "Yes, and I killed your brother." And he takes his eyeglasses off, and he finds out
Mhm.
some very interesting eyes. It has a rather high pitched scream.
But you do get a foreshadowing of that earlier, where he apparently one of the eyes he has gets knocked out,
Out.
and
After
he's covering his eye until he's able to fix it. So it's like it's kind of an interesting thing there. And one of the things that Christopher Lloyd did very specifically was he never blinked when you could see his eyes, and that did kind of help make him more villainous. But it also, when you think that he's wearing a disguise, well, obviously he wouldn't be blinking. That would make much sense.
And obviously, this ending was heavily influenced by The
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Now, I do have to say that, like I said, this is the part I have a little bit of a complaint. I just don't like the judge as a tune. That super high pitched voice, the even the parts where they animated the parts like the springs and whatever. It just didn't feel like it was on
I'll
quite
admit
the same level.
when he I don't know when he first like pumps himself back up after getting
Yeah.
steamrolled. I tend to quote that line a lot. Like, do you remember me, Eddie? When I can't.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call along if I
See,
see
you can't even do it.
But I talk just like this.
Yeah, but it's like, why did they need to do that? I don't know. I thought he was much more. I thought he was much more menacing before he was revealed as a tune, and then he just he loses all of that. To me,
I think
he
he's just meant
loses
to be
all the
annoying.
menace. He's just annoying.
Yeah, he's meant to be annoying and meant to be someone kind
Well,
of.
I always thought he was scary.
Yeah.
I think for me it's the disconnect that makes it kind of unsettling, that you don't expect someone that looks like a human, except for the eyes, of course. Because presumably they're. Honestly, I kind of wanted to know what he looked like underneath all of that, because we just
Same.
saw the eyes. We didn't see anything else. Not that
Right.
it really matters.
And we just know that he was yellow underneath somewhere.
Maybe he was that yellow bastard underneath from Sin City. But yeah, I think that his shrieking voice and the disconnect of everything that we knew to be before that, it takes you by such surprise, and I don't know. I think it's kind of unsettling in its own way. I do like him. I do like him better when he's just Judge Doom before that, but I do think after that, you don't expect someone that looks like that to suddenly shriek like a maniac.
Yeah,
No,
I agree
you
with
probably
that.
wouldn't.
I agree with that. It was.
He went so crazy so fast.
Well, but it does bring up the question, though, because again, all we really see is his eyes, and then whatever his appendages do, because they change forms a bunch of
With the
times.
sword
But
and
it does make you wonder, what the hell was he anyway?
Yeah.
Like what kind of dude was he?
Right.
Well, I do think that it was the unsettling nature of it and how different he was from the judge character that makes it effective. I mean, to me, even though I was still a preteen when I saw this, when he did that, he was twice as scary in the short run. If he had been the whole time like that, then yeah, but that for what he was at that short amount of time, I thought it was an incredibly effective way of changing the tone and moving it up like that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been effective if he was just, creepy cartoon from the start. Like, that reveal was important for really selling it.
I think the spring part though was really stupid.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
didn't
think
like
it
that
was.
part.
Well, the idea was that he had like a bunch of powers that we didn't know
Yeah.
about, and then this was like, surprise, he can do all this shit.
Right.
So there was a purpose to it.
Yeah.
But
I
think that's part of the issue, though. Like, in what Brandon was just saying, maybe it was effective in the short term. I wonder if it was just too short, because even though I was kind of annoyed by this portrayal of the character, it was so brief. It was like once he turned, it was just so brief. It almost when he's definitively defeated, it almost feels anticlimactic.
We didn't get a lot of it. Yeah, I think we got like just enough of it though.
I agree.
I wish that I would have seen a little bit more of what he was before he became doomed, though, before they melted him.
Didn't y'all just like take your time thinking to yourself, okay, which Toon isn't there at the end? Who's yellow? Okay, which one could he be? Just
What I
wondering.
That would have
What
been
I-
interesting if they had actually done that.
I think the
Right.
comics to explore his background a little bit. He was apparently the man who killed Bambi's mother.
That was something they said, yeah. The deer hunter.
well, eventually
Spectacular.
they had a really interesting fight. Judge Doom. That we feel, of course, he revealed that he was a Toon. He killed Eddie's brother. He can spout out, he can bring out related objects like swords and buzzsaws. It puts the Eddie in a lot of hurt, but eventually the judge is defeated. And
He's like Riot from Venom.
Well, he basically takes that punching thing and punches that nozzle or whatever, and that whole thing just kind of spews out, and you get that whole I'm melting scene.
That was
It actually
great.
is melting.
Oh my God, Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz, kind of like allegory you're
Yep.
talking about.
Yep.
Huh. I think he just finds out.
See, Dane, you missed one for Oztober.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
I mean, I
Talk
will
about that cyclone.
I will
Well,
eventually talk about some ancillary connections with that I had
Yeah,
bigger fish to
there's
fry.
a bunch
at the
more that
time.
you could do. So.
Okay.
All right. And then I think so obviously once they get him and they manage to use most of the dip, it's all over the floor and whatever. They got to get rid of that. But then this is the part where the will comes into play, right?
Yep, all the tunes come out
Yep.
of the brick wall.
Mhm.
Separating.
The sprayer crashes through the wall and
Yep.
opening up a hole into Toontown.
Yeah.
And he gets
it
gets
hit
run over by a train.
Yeah, it gets hit by a train, and then all the Toons are kind of like, "What the hell's going on over there?" And they
And
sort
then
of
the
rush
cops
into
show
the
the cops show
factory.
up too. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cab went and got the cops.
Mhm.
yep, and they spent a little bit of time trying to figure out who Judge Doom was. But well, actually, Dolores, Eddie's girlfriend, sees the ink stain on Eddie's shirt, and when they find out that it's disappearing, reappearing ink, which prompts Eddie to tell Roger to pull out that love letter and read it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So Roger pulls it out, reads the love letter, but then he finds that it's actually the will, and that the Toons get to keep Toontown.
And they had the will all along.
Yep.
And that's when you get that Maritime Melodies background with all them trees swinging of Toontown.
And our dear Jessica Rabbit is going to take Roger home and make him a carrot cake. Which I was a fan of carrot cake before, but then the thought of Jessica Rabbit making it, it's like, well, that just makes it all the better. So.
Right.
Where's the bonk stick or the spray bottle?
And actually, Roger asked Eddie if he's about his sense of humor and everything. And so sense of humor. Actually, Roger buzzes Eddie's hand with Acme's hand buzzer.
Yeah.
And Roger he thinks Eddie's gonna yank his ears again. But instead, Eddie grabs Roger and kisses him and asks him, "Does that answer your question?"
Everything is okay.
Well,
they all live happily ever after.
And you know that there's that one guy everyone else is like Jessica Rabbit, they're drooling. Then there's that one guy in the audience who's like, Roger and Eddie at last. Oh, and he's like,
yeah, the greatest romance of all.
There's always those shivers.
Of course.
No, I was thinking about the parallels from that and the Tim Burton Batman with the Joker buzzer and having people laugh themselves to death. Wouldn't it have been interesting if Roger had used the Joker buzzer and then at the end of that? Now, of course, that would have been a very different ending to the movie.
Batman didn't come out for another year.
Would have been very different, yes.
You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses, huh? Would you?
Would you?
And, well, and the funny part about that, though, is that in Tim Burton's Batman, it's the dark, creepy person who is the hero, and the colorful, lighthearted one is the villain. So that'd be like if Judge Dredd was the good guy.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It was back to the will real quick. One thing that we mentioned a couple of the lines as we go along, but there's a few good one-liners in here, a few good jokes scattered about. There's like one part where they is that?
There's a lot of good jokes.
Yeah,
but got a lot of comedy in here.
There's one part where they're talking about the will and the probate and all that stuff. And Roger's like, yeah, check the probate. Why, my Uncle Thumper had a problem with his probate. He had to take these big pills and drink lots of water.
I'll prosecute you with probate.
Nice booby trap, of course.
Yes, that was fun.
There's a lot of great a lot of great gags and little moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she did say she would bake a carrot cake. I must have missed that part.
Well, how could you not?
Well, it's just
right up to me.
Well, in Tummy Trouble at the end, she
all
also
this chaos.
She also said, "Let's go home and play patty cake."
So she'll bake him a carrot cake.
No, I'm talking about in Tummy Trouble, the short.
I haven't seen any of these. I wish I had.
A couple of them on Disney Plus.
On Disney Plus.
Yeah,
maybe I'll fire those up later.
Again, we did touch on the fact that it is amusing that they are literally playing patty cake. Especially considering that people. I don't even know how common patty cake was back then, let alone today. Like, I don't think if you ask a kid, let's play patty cake, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" I don't think kids do that anymore.
But like I said,
I was a kid back then, and I would probably still be like, "What are you talking about?"
I think
well,
again, when I saw this, I probably took
didn't
it
know it.
literally.
It was a Mother Goose rhyme, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I probably
I
took it
can't believe
literally.
they,
and
Yeah,
that's
they
you
what
had
I
guys
it
did.
don't
when
know
I was
what
a
patty
kid.
cake is.
Yeah.
They had it when I was a
never
kid.
did it.
You
I
play it to
I
little
never did
babies
it.
and stuff. You
Yeah.
say
I
it to
never-
little babies and stuff.
I never did
I
it
think-
when I was a kid.
I think that definitely was an amusing part of that joke that you could take it 100% literally and not think that there was anything different
Yeah.
about that.
Anything
And it's
weird
like,
going on.
and that reminds me again that great moment in the Big Lebowski. Lord, you can imagine where this goes. He fixes the cable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like see like that's a double entendre done really well, just because that
Right.
would totally go like there are plenty of double entendres in this, some of which are just like begging to be like, okay, we get it, you've got this humor of a 12-year-old, which I do, so I understand, but but it's like some of them are almost like Austin Powers level. And then there are other ones like Patty Cake. It's like that has an actual like childhood component to it as well as an adult innuendo component. So it works on both levels equally.
Which brings it to the Disney family level a little bit.
A little bit more than Nice Booby Trap because it's like, come
Yeah.
on, you're just
Yeah.
asking for it at that point,
Mm-hmm.
But
Like,
that was funny.
It was fun. It was funny, but it was also like this is like Austin Powers territory right here.
Yeah, I mean,
but
they weren't. They weren't.
Or
they
actually,
weren't trying to
if anything,
sneak
Austin
into
Powers
it.
is Roger Rabbit territory.
yeah, well, but you know what I'm saying. It's like that level.
Although there was a
obviousness.
pause before he said it, so I wonder if he had a cue card to say nice booby trap before saying it. So
I think the pause was from more comedic response. The pause adds to it a little bit.
I don't remember this line at all, but everyone else is obsessed with it.
Well, you take a guess as to why, but
because there was
they were frisking her for the will, and out comes like some kind of like bear trap.
Bear
yeah, it was like a bear trap.
Yeah, so that's why like nice booby traps.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it was
I know that
dress.
women have stored things in their cleavage before, but not quite not quite a bear trap or something of that nature. Although
that's a somewhat dangerous item.
Gabrielle from Xena the Warrior Princess had a dagger stuck inside hers.
Necessity's the mother of invention, though. So I don't rule it out in the future.
that dagger was actually sold as a broad dagger, no, breast dagger. That's what it was called when she bought it. You want a breast dagger, and you don't see her actually buying it, but then you see her using it later, so you know that she actually did buy it from the falafel guy.
Yeah.
But shall we talk about production here?
Sure.
We kind of have in different ways, at least in terms of visual effects, but the actual set design itself is pretty stunning in its own right.
Technically, this is an excellent movie in every way, really. Like, I can't really figure out how they pulled this off.
It's pretty unsurpassed and pretty inimitable, but it's also kind of a weird, unique animal in the sense that you really could only tell a story like this once before people start comparing you to it, and the ones that have tried since then, like Cool World and Space Jam, even those were not perfect comparisons because didn't really do the whole like tunes and humans living side by side in the same world type of thing. They usually kept
I'm not even
sure
they'll be able to do anything like this again.
Well, they've got a sequel coming out, so we'll see how that goes.
I would say at least nothing in terms of doing
have a sequel coming out.
It's been announced. Who knows what'll happen with it? But
but they've been saying it for years.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of again this to me this just feels too unique to really be
Mhm.
complicated. I mean, and even Space Jam, you actually look at that technologically, it's really basic compared to even what they did here, because it's mostly Michael Jordan against a green screen, and then they animate Looney Tunes around him and stuff like that. I mean, if you cared enough, you could do essentially what they did there and put it up on YouTube, and you'd probably exceed what they did there.
Well,
And
Whereas
then
this one
just
was much more complicated. They did a
yeah,
lot of. They had I don't know that they used any green screen or very
Nope.
little. I would imagine.
Apart from
The
Toontown.
although
yeah,
supposedly
Toontown would have been.
supposedly the only thing they did not use was matte paintings. I read a comment that Zemeckis realized that they didn't have any matte paintings and they almost put one in, but then they were like, no, we don't need it. But they had like
yeah.
every other effect they could think of. But I know they used puppetry with some of the scenes. They really wanted to make sure that the animated characters were interacting with the human characters, which something like Mary Poppins and whatever, it's not as interactive.
Yeah.
There's
Well, the
yeah.
other thing that people don't really talk about with the actual animation. And again, a lot of, like you mentioned, Mary Poppins. So that was done using the sodium vapor process, and so it's Mary, Bert, Jane, Michael going into the chalk painting. So they're in another world ostensibly. But here, the idea is that Toons and humans are living side by side. So you notice that the colors on each of the Toon characters will change with the lighting. When they're in bright light, their colors will get more intense, and then when they're away from it, their colors will get less intense. When they're actually filming a cartoon, their colors are bright and primary and Technicolor, everything like that. And then they're in the real world, and they're less bright. They're a little bit more nuanced, and it's like, well, that's a really good touch because it helps to buy the illusion that they're really there. Because if they were just one static color the whole time, it wouldn't work as well.
I do want to see what this film looks like brightened up and whatnot. I think they've released it in a Blu-ray, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what
they have.
I watched a Blu-ray, and personally, I thought it was supposed to be a remastered edition, if I remember correctly. I felt that parts of it seemed a little, like maybe a little more grainy than one would like, but I think overall it looked pretty good though.
They put out
waiting on a 4K.
Yeah, they put one out not too long ago. I haven't picked it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, mine's
actually,
probably not the recent one.
See, what
Was
Disney is waiting for before they fully go ahead is they're waiting until they purchase Warner Brothers, and then they're gonna go from there.
Warner Brothers just got merged with Discovery, so I don't know if that's going to be on the docket anytime soon.
Eventually, it's working towards all of entertainment being a monopoly under Disney. So,
actually, I have kind of a stupid question. Actually, was this Warner or Disney? Because I always get confused.
It was released under the Touchstone banner because they were afraid to put it out as a proper Disney film. But it was Disney.
Yeah, it was Disney, but
that's why Toontown is at Disney World, isn't it?
They were working with the talents of the people at Warner Brothers, though. Which also brought the talents of Tex Avery and his cartoon people. And Chuck Jones.
All the non-Disney characters were basically they were licensed out to Disney for this production.
Yeah, and you can really tell. Back when Disney operated Touchstone, that was their adult, and they put out a lot of movies that were adults only.
Ruthless People
through Touchstone. Yeah, back when they actually used Touchstone. Touchstone they haven't used in a long time.
Now they have Fox. Now they have Fox. I think they're going to use Fox for all their movies.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, but point being, like Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas was originally put out through Touchstones. That was deemed kind of too dark and weird for kids.
Yeah. Well,
Through the proper
actually,
Disney. But then when they re-released it, they put it out through Walt Disney Pictures.
yeah. Or actually, interesting. So Dick Tracy was they released they released Dick Tracy under Touchstone, but I like a lot of the Dick Tracy merch I own, it has it noted as copyright Disney.
Yeah. But like I said before, I think spiritually this film owes itself far more to the Looney Tunes, far more to Tex Avery than it does to the classic Disney cartoons.
Oh yeah, it favors them much more than it does Disney.
Well,
which actually may have something to do.
The reason why they were able to, I think, get the Looney Tunes characters and that kind of stuff is partially because they had Robert Zemeckis, they had Spielberg, they had these people that have a lot of clout, just like how they brought the only reason really why Spielberg directed Ready Player One, is because he had the clout with which to get all those different licenses together for all those different characters and properties and that kind of stuff all in one place. And it was more impressive back in the day and more impressive with those properties because they are so at each other's throats even today, in a way that the other kitchen sink movies that you see today, in a way that they are not as much.
Right. Now the film does have a conspicuous lack of Hanna-Barbera characters, though.
Well, Hanna-Barbera didn't come around until the 60s.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That would have been.
They did try to keep things as period accurate as they could, which was
save for Tinkerbell and the Penguins.
Yeah. Which, and you talk about cartoon sex symbol, Tinkerbell is her own kettle of fish.
And I'm trying to remember what it was I read. I read something about one of the reasons why this one may be a one and done deal was that Warner's went back just a few years later and asked Disney for a small favor. And Disney basically just told them to, go screw yourselves. And they didn't take kindly to that.
Are you so shocked that Disney would do that?
And then we got Space Jam.
Now this kind of shocks me that apparently the film was offered to Terry Gilliam at one point. That would have been a different movie.
That would have been too weird. I would have gone and seen that.
That would have been different.
That would be a good. It would have been a good additional movie to have just as its own thing. It wouldn't have replaced this, though. I mean, because you give Terry Gilliam anything, he's going to make it into a Terry Gilliam film.
Is Terry Gilliam still alive?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Well, then he can help in the sequel.
He could, and he knows something about movies that took 20-odd years to make because he did finally release The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, which was pretty good overall.
No, Darren Aronofsky has to do the sequel.
Now
you're Ben Wheatley.
But we're talking about the tone of the film. One thing that probably made sure that happened, but it's one of the reasons Chuck Jones got pissed, was that for whatever reason, Robert Zemeckis had final cut on this film, which you talk about having clout. That was kind of unusual that he was able, I guess, just from Back to the Future and
well, and he had Spielberg on his side, and that will carry a long way.
But still, having final cut in a Disney product is that's impressive.
But we have to consider this was Disney in their trying to get out of their dark age, so they didn't have the clout now.
And some people credit this film with kickstarting the Disney Renaissance, which is kind of fun too,
It's true. So, well, here's the funny part about Robert Zemeckis and clout and who let him do what and that kind of stuff. So the funny part about that is, yes, indeed, he and Spielberg have been very tight, and they, have run in parallel with each other in many ways. Robert Zemeckis has said many times that his films have tended to test very poorly, but then they come out and they're these massive hits. Like apparently, like you said, this didn't test very well. Forrest Gump didn't test very well. Castaway tested really badly, and yet they all were massive successes. So he's saying, the focus group testing process is just useless, and and he obviously knows what an audience, or at least he did it in his golden period. He knew what an audience would come out of their houses to see, and so. And I tend to agree with him. I think that if the audience knew what they wanted, then they wouldn't be the audience; they'd be the filmmakers, wouldn't they? There's something about giving the audience what they need as opposed to what they want or expect, and people don't really get that.
All right.
Hey, Roger, shall you take us into our favorite scenes or talk about music?
Let's talk about the music first.
It was good.
Yeah,
that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Yeah, the music in this is it's got a good mix between like serious tone and kind of like a zany tone. It's very hard to describe, at least for me.
The main theme, I think it's in the end credits, but like the main Roger Rabbit theme, because I have the Castaway soundtrack, quote unquote, is really just a greatest hits of Alan Silvestri and Robert Zemeckis collaborations with the Castaway theme at the very end, so kind of deceptively titled. It has the main Roger Rabbit theme on there, and every time I hear it, I'm thinking, and we're live from the red carpet, and it's a fabulous night. It has that like award show kind of feel to it, and that makes sense given the subject matter.
All right. I guess we can start talking about our favorite scenes. So let's start again with SeptumSin. What was your favorite scene in the movie?
Oh, easily, back when I was a child, it was the Donald Duck versus Daffy scene. But as an adult, actually, it's changed over to the scene that kind of introduces Eddie's office and all of just that transition. It's just so beautiful how they did that. I am still impressed to this day with that transition.
Okay, Forrest, what was your favorite scene in the movie?
Oh man, there's like so many great. Oh man, there's just so many great moments, like big moments, little moments. God, geez, it's so hard to pick. I don't know. For me, it's probably a toss up between Droopy's cameo and Bugs and Mickey's cameo, which I have as my avatar for tonight. Yeah, it's like I said. There's just there's so much. There's just so many moments in this movie that I still like that stand out to me, and like that I even quote to this day. But yeah, I would definitely say though, yeah, Droopy and then Bugs and Mickey.
Okay, what about you, Dave? What is your favorite scene in Roger Rabbit?
Okay, my favorite scene would probably be where Eddie's in the Cotton Club-ish thing, and his jaw basically drops when Jessica Rabbit shows up, and her face gets really close, and like somewhere in there, Betty Boop ends up like putting his chin up, and for some reason,
Betty Boop closes his jaw for him.
Yeah, that to me is always a funny moment to me. It's a great moment of one sex symbol trying to, help another guy, a guy that evidently is infatuated with the newest sex symbol on the block. It's just great nostalgia.
There's actually a little bit of pathos to that because this was one of Mae Questel, Betty Boop's voice actress. This was one of her final appearances. She played Woody Allen's mother the next year in Oedipus Rex, and then she was in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and that was it. Those were her final roles. So this
I thought that voice sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Yeah,
and all of the and that's another reason why you're not going to see this repeated, because most of the voice actors that were doing the originals are no longer with us.
Mel Blanc, who voiced everyone in the Looney Tunes canon, died 3 weeks after this film came out. So,
yeah, and then actually the voice actor. Okay, so they didn't have the original voice actors for Mickey and Minnie, but they were the voice actors for a long time, and they recently passed away in the last 5 years. Russie Taylor, who voiced Minnie until she passed away recently, and her real life husband voiced. I'm trying to remember his name, but he voiced Mickey. He voiced Mickey until he passed away. Wayne Alwine.
Also worth noting, especially because Roger, you said Yosemite Sam. We didn't even mention his cameo, really.
Yeah.
He's something like, my biscuits are burning, or something like that.
He's the focal point of the film for this particular month. So
he was voiced by Joe Alasky, but he was a Mel Blanc character. And I'd read that apparently Blanc just couldn't hit the high, like the shriek that he did when he was... So Alasky stepped in, and it's considered the only time that Blanc co-starred with someone else voicing one of his characters instead of him. And so that's kind of a weird little
and Alasky passed away. And Alasky just passed away 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think in the voice cast, Charles Fleischer, Kathleen Turner, April Winchell, and Tony Pope were among the few still remaining.
I should have realized that was Kathleen Turner. I don't know why I didn't, but that was kind of cool to read that.
Well, and so you know what's funny with her is, she was quite the sex symbol in her day. Like I'm thinking of 80s, when she was in Body Heat. And it's like, oh, okay, so Jessica Rabbit in real life.
Zemeckis' own films, Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile.
Yeah, Romancing Stone and Jewel of the Nile. She was definitely
good times.
I agree.
Also, Peggy Sue Got Married.
That was an earlier Jim Carrey moment.
And early Nicolas Cage.
What was your favorite scene in the movie?
Who did you ask?
Dustin.
It's a little difficult to pick one, actually, because a lot of this movie is pretty balanced in terms of like things to enjoy. So I don't know if there's anything that I would particularly choose. I think I like the Doom reveal. Like that sticks out in my mind the most.
Yeah,
I suppose. It's such a wild scene too when you see it's like, oh, this is basically the only evil killer tune in existence, which from the way everybody reacts doesn't seem to have been a thing up until that moment. So I like villains, so I guess we'll go with that. But really most of this movie is just so enjoyable that it is quite difficult to pick just one thing, so I'll kind of justify it with that.
Okay, Dane, what is your favorite scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
That's a tough one. I mean, basically anything with Jessica Rabbit's gonna kind of take the cake. But if I had to pick one of those, it'd probably be the scene with "I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way," just because that's such a memorable line. It's a classic femme fatale trying to get inside the inner workings, so to speak, of the lead detective character. It's a very archetypal scene that you've seen in a lot of film noir, but it's just done in its own wacky way. And that one, I think, in terms of the scene that there's no chance in hell you could ever replicate it today or see it ever again, probably that award would go to just seeing Mickey and Bugs on screen at the same time. Yeah, so that's its own unique piece of film history that you will never ever see again. I don't think, as long as those characters remain under copyright, of course. But yeah, I think anything having to do with Jessica Rabbit will kind of take the cake, but especially that scene, just because she's at her most interesting.
All right, Crow, what was your favorite scene in the Rabbit movie?
Well, when I was a teenager, I'd say the first time I laid eyes on Jessica Rabbit, I was probably had close to the same look as the main character there, as Eddie, just like whoa, jaw dropping, But now I'd have to say I agree with the villain reveal that he was a tune, and his death too, and the whole I'm melting. I absolutely love that from The Wizard of Oz, and so I would go with that. But
All
I
right.
agree that everything with Jessica Rabbit was definitely eye taking in that. Like I had said before, that line is my favorite line from the movie.
Okay, Tammy, what is your favorite scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Well, I like all the scenes with Droopy. he just he's that monotone tone of his, Okay, sir, that's always
Going down, sir.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Good.
Have a nice day, sir.
yeah. And I do I like when Doom gets melted. So
Melting my beautiful wickedness.
Okay,
Right.
Kotobukijake, what is your favorite scene in the whole film?
It is kind of hard to pick a favorite. Most of this, again, I don't like the reveal with Doom. I'm going to differ with some of you on that, but the scenes prior to that, even though I won't say I like the scene where he's melting the shoe, that's probably the most memorable scene of the film. Arguably, Jessica's introduction would tie that, but in terms of sheer memorability, that scene is just, it sticks out. And
I actually
again,
forgot it.
I
Well, it's
love
so violent and disgusting. I mean, you
yes,
really can't
Yeah.
forget it.
I
actually
love
forgot
I
all
love the
about it.
piano duel, again between Daffy and
Donald.
Donald.
How did you
Yeah.
forget that?
Well, it is 12:20 in the morning. But if I had to pick a favorite, yeah, I gotta go with Eddie's expression when he sees Jessica for the first time. That is the best holy shit expression I think I've ever seen in a movie. So I am amused by that.
All right. I guess I would say my favorite scene. There's a lot of you guys. Everybody had talked about really good scenes. I would say that this to be a little bit different. I would say that another good scene I remember quite vividly was the entrance of Cartoonville for the first time, or Toonville. I would have looked at that and said,
Toontown.
what the heck is this? All these rainbow bright characters, all the movement and strange people and strange critters and being animated was something
Yeah.
that I don't think I will never ever see ever again in any kind of other kind of film. And
Yeah.
I guess, and with that, I will turn this over to Dave.
Alrighty. I guess let's do our outros. So, Roger, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, my name is Roger. I run a small Facebook group called the Animation Collection Company. We specialize in anime, figures, and manga. Also, I happen to have one of the largest collections of anime in Florida with the Super Grand Grid Array.
Nice.
Cool.
Going over to Dane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am Dane Kyle, a filmmaker out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and a film educator. This past October, I did a YouTube series called Oztober, where I looked at 31 different Oz related film and TV adaptations. I'm currently hard at work trying to do April in Wonderland for April 2022, and that's rapidly turning into its own kind of its own project. I'm incorporating a lot more just filmmaking and trying to tell my own story in addition to talking about 30 different Alice in Wonderland adaptations. So it's turning into its own undertaking. As you know, I thought I bit off more than I could chew with October, and now I'm biting off even more than that. So, look forward to that.
Alrighty. Going over to you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I collect horror stuff here in Milwaukee. I have a YouTube channel for showing off pickups, the Crypt of Horrors, and I also have an Instagram, the Crypt of Horrors. So sometimes I don't get enough stuff to make a video, so I just take some pictures and put them on Instagram. So I used to find pretty cool stuff when it was easy to get about. Not so much lately, but that'll change eventually.
Mhm.
I'm also on Twitter as Cryptaxis. I wish I was just Cryptaxis, but some idiot has that, so damn. That's pretty much it for me.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Forrest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, my name's Forrest Bennett. I'm an independent film producer based in Long Island, New York. Actually, a movie that I recently served as an associate producer on, Bloody Summer Camp, starring Felissa Rose and Dave Sheridan, is now out on DVD. You can go to Slasher 15 Productions' website and get it there. And I've always got some sort of project going. I've always got something going on. Got some kind of project going on in the pipeline.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Kroll. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm disabled, so I don't do anything as far as working, but I watch movies and TV shows, read books, and play a lot of games.
Awesome. Heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm David's fiance, so I've actually been trying to get into a lot more of the show and learning more about the movies. I have my own collections, and I don't do things with the movies like you guys do, but I cook and I bake very well.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right, my name's Jake. I live here in Central Virginia, where I am an avid collector, fan, viewer, what have you, of all sorts of media, but definitely movies, music, big anime fan, what have you. And I co-host on SeptumSin versus the World YouTube channel, where we talk about physical media. And last night we did our monthly anime discussion, where we talked about one of my picks, the anime that I have often described as the anime David Lynch would make if he made an anime, which is the Kunihiko Ikehara series Maru Penguin Drum. Very strange show, but a lot of fun. We had a good discussion. We had Brandon, Dave, and Roger on with us, and I think it went pretty well. I also am trying to get involved in production when I can. I've got several items on Kickstarter that I've thrown some money towards, one of which, Tipping the Pain Scales, a documentary that apparently is starting to hit the festival circuit now. So that's pretty cool. And most of the time, though, I'm trying to find time for viewing because I'm busy starting a native plant nursery, and that takes up a lot of time. But
Tuned for,
You're doing great, buddy.
stay tuned for Brandon and Jake's amazing searing dramatic turn as the Mad Hatter and the March Hare in April in Wonderland.
Change places.
which means that we're going over to Brandon. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We are a physical media channel. We've been kind of on a semi hiatus, though we still do pickup videos and discussions, such as, well, our recent anime discussion that Jake has put up. But we're hoping to, once things get more stable on my end, move back into things like reviews, new releases, which I always thought was a valuable thing, but one day. I also work with Inside Movies Galore. Dave, did you want me to hold off on next week until the end, or do you want me to do
Sure,
that now?
I'll hook it back to you after I do my moniker. So,
All right.
my name is David Streggy. Obviously, I'm not 100% yet, but I run and I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, where we go on a film adventure, talking about different films, from silent films on up to current day subjects. So, thank you for joining us as we went down the rabbit hole and saw Who Framed Him on this wonderful evening. And but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about my own video pickups and video reviews, and hopefully you can check some of those out, and hopefully I'll be able to get back into reviewing myself once I'm done being sick. So in any case, thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. Thank you for listening. And stay tuned, as Brandon will tell us exactly what's in store for us next week.
Well, next month is the introduction to the holiday season, so to speak. We have our 4 movies for December. Just going down the list from last to most recent. We're going to end our month on the 28th with White Christmas, the Irving Berlin film. Then we're going to do another Christmas classic on the 21st called It's a Wonderful Life. A couple of you may have heard of that one. On the 14th, we're going to do a Muppet film called Gremlins. Another child's film, to be sure.
Nice try.
Honestly, it really is kind of a kids' movie.
So, and of course, next week, we're going to continue our animation run as we go to the world of Halloween for Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, I might do that one. I think I'll do that one.
It will be fun.
That's next week.
Yep, next week, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, or well, just time as varies.
Alrighty. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're definitely going to have a blast this Christmas season. So, stay tuned for more excitement, and we'll be back.
Yep. That's all, folks.